Oh, the lights are bright.
Oh, it's cold right here.
Yeah, probably still not on occupied.
Theater control. Can't hear.
Like a fancy restaurant.
I had last night. I could have hooked the whole time. I'm like, oh my God. You're trying to get it.
Tell me when you're ready.
As soon as you see anything up there, then we should be good. How's it look? Is it clear?
So are we, you're gonna have just that up there.
Yep, and then I'll, so just kind of, we'll ask you to work on the links off the business.
Okay.
Right? And Beth's in back if we have to verify access points for you guys, and then the crowd will see this, and that's what's filmed and going out. So we are live streaming, and it's open to the public from here all the way through until we can't. Okay?
All right. Mr. Flaherty, are we ready? All right, welcome. This is the Prescott School District Board of Education regular meeting. We are on item E, Pledge of Allegiance. And Pat, are you care to lead us? Pat? Yep.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. Item F, recognition of visitors. Is there anybody that would care to be recognized? Is there anybody online that can they be recognized online or just?
Not on this, yes.
Okay. Doesn't appear that there's any visitors. All right, we will move on to item G, good news. Rick, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to start off by having our principals and admin team come forward, and we're going to start with Ms. Dusick, Malone Elementary principal.
The microphone's not on, I don't think, is it?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
There we go. Sorry about that. All right, so our good news is that this week we welcomed 122 students back on site for Cardinal Academy. 122 students, 5 staff, and we offered 9 classes. We had several yesterday, today, and then there's more coming tomorrow. And it's been pretty amazing having students back on site. Even the custodian came into my office yesterday and he was like, it is so fun hearing little voices in the hallway again. So it's gone really, really well. They have come, they've worn masks, there's been no issues. It's just been fun to have the kids back in the hallways and back in the classrooms learning again. And other than that, the hallways have been busy with staff coming in, getting ready for the start of the school year. They're excited, they're anxious, they're nervous, but they're ready. They just want the kids back in the building, and it's going to be exciting to see everybody back on August 31st and September 1st. So.
Thank you. Principal Kozmowski from Intermediate.
Good evening. Much of the same of what Ms. Dusick was saying. We have the Cardinal Academy going on for our 3rd graders, and we have Ms. Stacy Helders and Erica Kieser are teaching in our building. So I want to publicly thank them for prepping and then having our students on site. Each day we've had about 20 students, and things have gone very smoothly. The kids have transitioned very well back into school. With that being said, I would just want to thank our custodial staff for diligently working around the clock the last few weeks to get our building ready for Cardinal Academy and opening up of the school year. And lastly, our PLC team has been meeting, we've met twice now, full days in August, and working on our transition back to school, but really the entire intermediate staff engaging with me online as we work through our return to learn models and what it's going to look like in our school. And we're just looking forward to the beginning of school year and having more kiddos in the building.
Thank you. Mr. Igo with our middle school.
Good evening, everyone. Prescott Middle School, we also have been busy. This week has been our student ambassador training that we have 18 eighth graders in, and our new counselor, Abby Schultz, has been taking our student ambassadors through a leadership program and getting them prepared for tomorrow, which is our sixth grade orientation, where our sixth graders are going to meet up with our eighth graders. They'll be in groups of 5 to 6 sixth graders per eighth grader. They'll get some intimate tours of the building. They get some time to chat with our eighth graders about what middle school life is. And this is really the beginning, the true beginning of what their transition into the middle school is. That orientation is from 9 until noon tomorrow, and we look to have a pretty solid crowd for that. We also, as far as staff go, our staff have been back, and we are as busy as ever right now. We have done 1 day of data along with working on our return to learn plans. We've been busy building schedules and just prepping for the school year. I do want to thank Deb Tobias, Sharon Wills, and Katie Hillebrand for just assisting in the registration process. And through our registration process this year is how we are signing up, and students are choosing classes between band, choir, and STEM. And we're in that process right now, so we are just finally finishing up some of our classes and scheduling, and I couldn't be doing it without them. So thank you to those 3 ladies.
Mr. Figge with Prescott High School.
Good evening. We've also been busy. First thing I'd like to say is just a very big thank you to our Return to Learn team and PLC leaders who have been in the building really over the past few months working on coming back to school on the plan. We've had new teachers in the building the past couple of weeks, prepping classrooms, getting curriculum ready, building new programs. And then the past 2 weeks, we've also had students coming in for orientation, meeting with counselors, both our returning counselor and our new counselor. We've seen about 390 students in the past 7 days now. And we have our last class coming in for their second day tomorrow. So that's been excellent to see. We also had 59 students who took part in our virtual summer school courses this summer. They did everything from virtual marine biology to medieval literature, cybersecurity, etc. And those 59 students all completed their courses and got high school credit for those, so that was awesome. The last thing is just a huge congratulations. One of our teachers, Jeff Ryan, was nominated and then has actually won the History Teacher of the Year for Wisconsin from the Gilder Lehrman Institute. So he's one of 51 History Teachers of the Year nationwide, and he'll go on to compete for the National History Teacher of the Year. So congratulations to Mr. Ryan as well.
Matt Smith, our Activities Director.
Thanks for having me. Good to see everybody. First off, I want to say thanks to our custodial staff here in the district, all the work that they've done this summer getting the schools ready, whether it's maintenance around the buildings and preparations for COVID, or just general fields, getting stuff ready for camps and whatnot. Kudos to them and the job that they did. Speaking of activities, we've had dance, girls golf, and cross country are all off and running here for the fall. They've been doing their practices, workouts, and whatnot, and everything's going very smoothly, so very proud of that here in the time that we're in. This summer we had multiple camps and contact days that went on, and obviously it was a little bit different with the expectations and the guidelines laid out there, but I'm very proud of all our coaches and all our people that took place in that, and their ability to be disciplined in all that they did in honing their crafts and skills there. Lastly, speed and strength went on, starting up here for high school students in the high school weight room and outside, and they've been going after it, working hard. It's just great to see having kids back around and doing everything, and we were able to do that here in the summer without any issues. So, like I said, very proud of everyone there, and I feel that's good newsworthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mark Inouye with Student Services.
Good evening. Just want to kind of echo what Sarah and Michael were sharing a little bit. We did have a lot of, this week, our special education staff be in. we really organized this week around special ed transition. So we had a lot of our special education students come in, do some one-on-one work with our special ed teachers to get some baseline information on some of their IEP goals, reacclimate them to the school, and really just help them kind of prepare for a return to school programming after about 5 months of off-site work. So really want to thank my special education staff for all their efforts over the past week and all the work that they've done with organizing these sessions. So that's the good news around student services.
Thank you, Mark. I just, as superintendent of the Prescott Public Schools, I want to welcome back our staff that will be returning on August 24th. A huge thank you to the administrative team that is sitting in front of me and the school board to the side of me. On Monday, August 17th, that was the 5th month anniversary with regards to when we had to move from on-campus learning to off-campus learning. The amount of work, and you'll see a lot of that come forward the last meeting, but also tonight. That's on a very fast-paced treadmill. At 1:30 today, the Department of Health for Wisconsin released one of 3 reports that were promised with regards to reopening schools on a framework. They have decided not to put forward anything around athletics, and they have removed the guidance that was to parallel kind of the State Department from Minnesota. Nevertheless, the 14 or 12 and 14-hour days by every different group or kind of staff area has been acknowledged, and we are very proud of the work that's been in place. We believe that we will be able to open on August 31st and welcome and ramp up for the year, and then officially September 1st, our first school day. Continue to watch our Facebook posts and our website with any breaking news, and thank you to our principals for getting the information out, and a much appreciated thank you to Cassie Butler, our registered nurse, who has continued to work throughout the summer to guide us in our best practices as we prepare to welcome back staff and students on August 31st. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rick. On the business, we'll start with the consent agenda, and in the consent we have minutes, board bills, a few personnel updates, one retirement, several resignations and new hires. Is there anything that the board would like to remove from the consent agenda? If no updates, I will adopt the consent agenda. Are there any objections? All right, the consent agenda is adopted. On to number 2, employment. Looks like there isn't any.
Correct. At this time, there are no new positions being hired.
All right, so no motions are needed there. We'll move on to item 3, consider technology department and administration proposal for multi-year lease for Chromebooks.
So kind of TV, we're going to ask Mr. Flaherty, come on down. The incredible team of Andy Holland and Kyle Flaherty getting us to be able to do off-campus learning last year with like 48-hour notice was been remarkable. But what we're going to propose to you today is we did a lot of information gathering, both from our staff and families, about what worked well, what didn't. We have had teams working on different ways and software that we can deliver from at the Malone Elementary and Intermediate School. We've bought additional software to integrate for our teachers so that it's more of a seamless process, so that less manual entering and allowing us to be more flexible as we gave the choice to families that they could start off campus or on site, and we would meet them where they are. We also will be presenting a hybrid model later today. That obviously takes a lot of technology, and we are changing our instructional delivery to meet students not only just having recorded classes, but also to do that live, what we would call synchronous learning. In order to do that, we need more devices. The reason I'm having Mr. Flaherty come up is to share with you kind of the contract that we're putting forward. Historically, we wouldn't necessarily have to bring this toward you. But there's a condition that we understand is that this is a multi-year contract because we're looking at a lease. I have the money from the biennium for the first year and a grant for the second year. But the third year is not promised because it falls into the next legislative session. So the piece that I wanted to say is I believe that it's essential for us to move forward and meet the needs of our teachers and also families and students to move to this lease. However, I can only guarantee you that I have confidence that we have the money for the first 2 years. If we're cut significantly, I would either have to make cuts elsewhere, or we do have a healthy fund balance that would require board action at that time. And so that's why we're bringing it here. But I'll turn it over to Mr. Flaherty. I'll pull up the talking points that you have, and if you could just lead us through why purchase, why lease.
Sure.
The difference between the two.
Yeah, so when we obviously went to off-campus learning, one of the biggest discussions was if we are deeply into this Google and Google Classroom-centric thing, getting devices, especially to our high school students, was huge because we were asking a lot of them while expecting them to bring it to the table. So about May, Andy and I started the process of finding out what our other districts were doing, Hudson, Ellsworth, River Falls, to kind of feel out how they approach this model. Obviously, your two options are purchasing and leasing. Well, I have, for the most part in my time here, we've purchased everything. The one pro of the lease we found was most people gave some form of a repair plan. And as a staff of 2 in a tech department, bringing on 430 more Chromebooks and trying to figure out how to repair them just didn't seem like anything we could in any way rationalize. So we went to a couple different companies, Firefly to St. Paul, Trinity 3, which is out of the Metro, and a couple other leasing houses, and just kind of compared pricings and comparatives. And as you might assume, their pricings all became the same. Like purchasing a car, it was all the incentives that change it. So we basically, again, leaned on the ability of, can we support them? Can we repair them? Can we get the tech? And the option we went with was Trinity 3 solely because they gave us unlimited repairs for any reason. They gave us 2% what they call loss prevention. So if you do the math, 430, about 8 to 9 Chromebooks, we can just lose and they will replace. Just a student lost it, we don't know where it is. They will send us a parts cart. So if we choose to do parts on site, we can repair them, and they will pay to ship them from us and back to us as we repair them. So that was why we also went with that option. With the lease, how it works is it's called a fair market value lease, which means at the end of the lease, they will offer to buy them back to us at fair market value. Looking at history for Chromebooks, it ends up being about $40 or $50 a Chromebook. They do give the option that if a family had said, hey, I'd give you $40 if I can just keep it, that's fully okay. It's indifferent to them whether we sell it to families or we sell it back to them or we just choose to keep them, but that option is on the table. I'm trying to think of, the other biggest reason we kind of looked at this was very early on we talked about wiping down Chromebooks. And we started to play the game of, okay, if at the high school level, if we wiped it between each class, and we wiped all 30 of them, and we wiped every Chromebook, quickly Mike Hoyk and I got to a ridiculous, I think it was like $23,000 in wipes over the first year. Now, obviously, that's an exaggeration because it assumes a wipe for literally every minute, but it showed us that we would be investing some money in our current devices regardless. And those devices vary from end of life, so they're 4 years old, to a few that we've gotten just this year. So that covers where we got to and how we got here. It does represent another increase of, as we said, 430 Chromebooks to our fleet. So it is a large bump, and it does have the cascading effect of allowing us to rotate some of our existing devices down to the middle school, down to the intermediate, to give us a more one-to-one-esque feel at those levels as well. Anything else, Rick?
Thank you.
Perfect.
Any questions?
Pat, you have any questions?
I do not.
Steve?
The only thing I would ask would be regarding budgeting for the dollars, Rick.
What, your question is how much, or?
Well, I can see how much. I want to know where the money's coming from to pay for them is what I'm trying to get at.
So we're at this point, we're building the budget for October. And so Renee and I have identified that we'll be able to find $42,000 to cover for this initial year. Then we also will be receiving some CARE dollars from the federal government, up to $32,000. And we're going to categorize that towards instructional support. And so we've made that arrangement so that that would cover year 2.
We've also eliminated the fact that we replace, on average, about 100 at the high school every year, and those no longer will be replaced, so there is some offsetting costs within that realm.
Thank you.
Tanya?
Yeah, there was it discussed the maintenance and repair and stuff like that, and there's
Yep.
a few things that aren't covered. I was wondering if we were gonna ask our families to help with the warranty option. I know in my district, I think it's $50 they pitch in, or they can opt out, but then they would incur a cost if something happened that wasn't repairable through this company. Are we doing something like that, or are we just?
Sure. Well, a couple things. One, the only thing they won't recover is what's called malicious damage, aka you've stabbed a pencil through your screen.
Kids I work with damage? Yeah.
Sure. Yep. 100%. No, I'm with you. And in talking with Hudson, River Falls, and a few of them, they basically all stated, and again, I'm not the legal team of this, that in Wisconsin, it's a real tough sell to pass on any of that, and that's why this company doesn't even lease it to you as a separate part. It is just a dollar amount, because then it's not, quote, separatable. So if you were to choose a sum, it would be an arbitrary sum of our choosing, and that would be something I would allow someone else beyond me to make the call of. Because to the best of our knowledge of them repairing parts, and Andy and I also being able to technically purchase our own, we could in-house even cover most of the malicious damage to offset and probably be pretty safe.
And if a student were to maliciously damage their computer, their Chromebook, would they have another one, or are they kind of done with it because they tried?
So similar to, I would argue, anything else that we deal with Mr. Figge or Mr. Igo. I mean, obviously, we will have spares, we will have things to repair, but we'll work with them also. If this is the third one we've repaired, we'll have a different conversation.
Yep. And then is the view of the district that this is kind of a thing that we're doing right now because there's a pandemic and some learning style? I mean, we might kind of go in and out of one-on-one, hybrid, all these different things. We want kids to have access to their education, or is this something that we're going to become incorporated as part of like a learning tool, and therefore like this will continue beyond the 2 or 3 years as long as we can keep affording it? And then would will textbooks be online? Is that the vision here? And will teachers have training and stuff like that?
I mean, I will speak, and then Rick, I'll let you. I think we kind of are viewing it as we'll call it a forced pilot. This has been a discussion that a lot of people have said, oh, it'd be really nice if we had that. This would be a great opportunity. We've had conversations with teaching and learning of we could go to digital textbooks, but you have to make that leap. And I think that we've always been on the precipice, and I think COVID has allowed us to just have that nudge to say, we have these 3 years to go. Is this a direction that makes sense for Prescott, makes us work, makes us tick? Can we do it with our existing infrastructure and network? And because of COVID, we've been kind of forced to test the waters. I know that in talking with some of the admin, they really like the idea of having this, especially with Google and our integrations with Classroom. I'll let Rick speak to him, but in my opinion, I think this is the perfect litmus test that'll allow us to see how feasible it is.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that will come out in the next item when we talk about the hybrid and professional development that go with that.
Perfect. That was all my questions.
Vicki, you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't.
All right. If kids have their own personal devices, they're still going to be able to bring those in and use those, or are they going to be mandated to use the Chromebooks?
I don't have any reason as a technology department to mandate them not to. We still have the Wi-Fi, we still have the guest network. Since we've moved to our gig network, we don't throttle the guest network anymore, so there's not speed dependencies. I'll admit we did not discuss, do we still issue the device to them? It's the assumption that everyone will be offered one. They aren't, of course, forced to take it. But yeah, there's no reason for us not to have it. It's a little harder for us to support, but there's no reason that we can't support it on our current network.
All right. Yeah, I love the direction we're heading. I hope it works out really well. So good job on this one.
Me too.
We'll take a motion if we're ready to go here.
I move to approve a multi-year lease for Chromebooks to be utilized for the, well, it's a blank here, but do you want me to say for the 2021, because it's for 3 years. So I move to approve a multi-year lease for Chromebooks to be utilized for the next 3 years.
That good?
Yep.
All right.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Item 4 was stricken, so we're going to move to item 5. Consider adjustment to academic calendar for 2020, 2021.
Okay. One of the things, as you can tell, since summer hit, is everything's been moving very, very fast. We have 16 business hours before our staff are in front of us, and we have a lot of things that our staff have already participated in above and beyond this summer, and very thankful. One of the things that my administrative staff also has been going full bore since March 17th, and we know that when we reopen, there's going to be a lot of unknowns. On December 19th, 2019, you adopted a calendar, and it was a very different world back then. In order to make sure that we have an opportunity to do a quick environmental scan after the first week of school to verify our meal distribution and food service is going well, the health of our students and attendance, transportation, I'm asking for the board to adjust our Friday, September 4th, to become a half day with students. The half day is going to be defined up through 1 p.m. Is that correct with my secondary?
Yes.
Right. So it would be, end of day would be 1 p.m. We would provide all meals, and the transportation would be the same. It does not impact 4K because they do not have students on Fridays. And so we would appreciate the opportunity. It would be a non-duty requirement for the staff, and there would be no change, obviously, to their contract. So it's coming before you, given that it's already been an approved contract, our calendar days, and it's the Friday before Labor Day, gives the admin team the time to meet and be able to get out of town ahead of time, before sundown. So we're asking for September 4th to be modified to a half day, defined as a 1 p.m. exit.
Vicki, any questions, comments?
No.
Tanya?
No questions. I'm fully in support of this. I think our admin team has gone, full speed since probably March. So if we need some time to analyze how the first week went and make adjustments so our kids can stay safe and our staff can stay safe, I'm for that time.
Steve?
Yeah, I would agree with Tanya on that. And the other thing, and I know you guys will do this anyway, but communication to families probably needs to happen right away so that they, if they've got to make adjustments for daycare or work or whatever.
Oh, good clarification. We have partnered with YMCA as well, that any family that needs childcare on that day, since we're cutting it to half day, they'll be able to absorb additional families as well.
Good to know.
So thank you, Steve.
Pat?
No questions.
All right. We'll need a motion.
I'll move to approve administration's recommendation to modify September 4th to be a half day, releasing at 1 p.m.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Item 6, consider secondary hybrid models and county district metrics that would trigger implementation of hybrid model of instruction at secondary level.
Okay. Before, I'm going to have our 2 secondary principals come forward and kind of walk you through a framework that was intended to be released by the Department of Health last Wednesday. As I kind of talked in my opening remarks, that report and guidance is not going to be released. Interestingly enough, I did talk with Pierce County Public Health today, A.Z. Snyder, the director. They are receiving that report or framework to help districts guide what happens in between on-campus and mandated virtual learning. As you know, we did give all of our families the opportunity to start off campus. They did not have to define or describe any reason or rationale, and we have been collecting that information. Our principals, our counselors are reaching out. We're also verifying the technology through the orientation days to try to make sure that we can meet the needs of anybody that chose to start the year off campus. The one thing that we are asking our families to do is to make a formal commitment by September 25th. As you can imagine, with a lot of the precautions that we're taking in the plans that we shared with you last month about the cohorting, social distancing, it becomes very difficult for us to absorb families that would be off campus and coming on and off. We also think that that would be disruptive to the student and to our faculty. That said, all of our principals have agreed that they, and have communicated that out to families about the 25th as kind of the decision date, but they and all families have the right to change their mind, and we will meet with them directly with the principal if they want to change that option. We just need to make sure that it happens in kind of an intentional and a strategic way. So we have the off-campus option and we had the on-campus option. One of the things in the release today from the Department of Health is that the cases that are being identified within the state of Wisconsin and also across the nation, for the age group of 0 to 10, it is emerging, and every day you hear about the new research that's coming and how we've learned so many things and changed our interpretations of things since March 17th. But the age range of 10 and below, which is really the intermediate school and elementary, we have 200 to 250 students in spaces that have additional space. The intermediate school has the largest square footage, and Malone has some additional space, as you know, from 4 additional classrooms where we can spread out the students. Therefore, we looked at the opportunity to, in preparation, the state of Minnesota had put out a matrix with regards to when and how to make the decision of moving from 100% of the students on campus in our buildings following our regular schedules. We've already made an adjustment moving to trimesters and the number of classes from 7 to 5. So our middle school and high school principals have been working, looking at different models. We are modeling ours off of the Stanford model, but also looked at Hudson and New Richmond. And they'll go into a little bit more detail with regards to how the hybrid would be, what it encompasses, how we would divide the students, and the support and training that we would give to our staff, and how we would then communicate that out to families. We'll end with kind of the metrics of what would trigger, what information would we have about the incident rates externally, and we're going to call that, we're using one gold standard, and that's the Department of Health. Every Wednesday at 2 p.m., they report by county the burden rate, and that's the number of cases for the last 14 days that occurred with regards to 100,000. And so we'll be able to show that, and I'll just, for our public's viewing real quick, put that up. So there's a website through the Department of Health. It's reported every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. We'll have the count of cases, the burden rate. We'll know if the trend is going up and down. And that's kind of how we'll be able to determine whether or not we would move into a hybrid. In addition, one of the things that we're going to be looking at is how long students would stay in that model before we come back. And so with that, I'm going to post the hybrid model for the high school. They mirror each other with one minor exception for the middle school, and I'll have both Mr. Igo and Mr. Figge kind of explain that as I bring that up. So Gentlemen?
Good evening again. So, looking at a hybrid model, as Dr. Spikuza said, we have really what are two plans in place right now. We have 100% of our students on site roughly for 5 days a week, and then we have an all off-site virtual model for students who or families who have elected to go that direction. What we don't have right now is really kind of our plan B, and that's what is proposed in front of you with our hybrid model. So this comes about as we've worked with a lot of other districts around us and taking a look at what they're proposing, taking a look at the Minnesota model that came out 2 weeks ago, and really realizing that we need to be prepared for the possibility that because we're in a high burden rate for our county, there could be circumstances that take us outside of the school. And as Mr. Igo, Dr. Spikuza, and I started to dialogue, the last thing that we think is beneficial for students' education is to have to go from everybody on site to everybody off site. So this is kind of that halfway point that I think gives us a safety net. The hybrid model that you see in front of you is called an AABB cohort model. So in terms of what we're looking at, if we take a typical week for a teacher or a student, Monday is an all virtual day. It allows our custodians who are in the building to do a little bit deeper cleaning before or after the previous week and before the next week. It allows our staff to do a lot of the prep work that will be additional to them trying to live in two worlds. So we're going to, like all districts, be asking our teachers to live in multiple worlds this year. Both the on-site students are coming all offline, and then students who are going to be in this hybrid model. And then in the middle part of the day, we're going to ask students to join us and our teachers synchronously for half-hour increments of direct instruction. And this is a time when teachers are previewing the week for those students, when teachers are kind of giving them a preview of the learning targets for the week, what they should be doing asynchronously, which means without the teacher, some offline work, and then doing some direct instruction during that half-hour period as well. So students are already kind of getting geared up for the week. And then in the afternoon, this is really a time for our teachers to host open office hours, directly reach out to some high-need students or high-need groups, do some direct tutoring and direct support or interventions, and then for our teacher teams to meet, because the needs that we have this year, all the way from grade level teams to our student services team, our department level teams, they will be shifting in a constantly moving landscape. And so I think investing in our teachers' time and helping support students is going to be paramount, and the time to do that is going to need to be built into these days. And then getting into Tuesday through Friday, this is where the AABB cohorts come into play. So in an AABB cohort, essentially you split your student body in half. We've elected to split our student body in half by last name, so last names A through L are part of our red cohort, and students' last name M through Z are part of our blue cohort. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays, our red cohort is on site in our proposal. They're learning face-to-face with the teacher, and our blue cohort is off-site. They're at home. However, for their core classes, they are still logging in at the time of their class and synchronously learning real-time with their teacher, dialoguing virtually with the students in the class. For our elective classes, which don't lend themselves as well to synchronous learning, if you think about what we offer, welding, woods, foods class, those are very, very difficult to synchronously teach all the time consistently. Those would be a split or a mixture of asynchronous learning and synchronous learning, depending on the learning activity for the day. The other thing that does for us is it allows us to not ask our students to be spending 8 hours in front of a computer daily on the days that they're out of school. And then Thursday and Friday, the red and blue cohorts switch. Red goes off-site, and they are learning synchronously for their core classes, and a blend of synchronous and asynchronous for their elective classes. And blue comes on site, and they're learning face-to-face with the teachers as a continuation of the activities and instruction that was occurring on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I'm going to pause there because I think there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm going to allow Mr. Underwood to explain the middle school.
So as we developed this, we really did develop it as a 6-12 model. So the middle school is nearly identical to the high school, minus, obviously, they are now at a 5-period day. We're at a 7-period day. So instead of starting at 9 a.m. on our virtual Mondays, we'll start at 8:30. We still end at noon. The other one is, depending on when we start this, is I believe that we need our 6th graders in our buildings, in our building, for up to 2 weeks in time. And so if all of a sudden our incident rate would, or our burn rate would come back and say, hey, the first week of school we have to go to, or the second week of school we have to go to hybrid, I think that I need to keep our 6th graders on campus for 1 more week after that in order to continue to build that transition year, in order to continue to train, in order to really get them ready as 6th graders to be able to learn in the off-campus world synchronously and asynchronously through some of our exploratories. So that is the large difference that we have. Is I would just ask that our 6th graders are able to stay on 1 extra week if this has to start earlier. If this comes and it's October and we've already gone through a month of school and those things, our 6th graders then would start the whole process with our 7th and 8th graders at the same time the high school would.
Probably a lot of questions, so.
Yeah, are we looking, so Tanya, why don't you want to ask your questions?
Kind of ask for all of us here. I know that this is so much to wrap your guys' head around, and I mean, I think it's really hard to wrap our heads around, and it's hard for families to understand it. So just real quick, I just want to define a few things. Like you guys talked about asynchronous learning and synchronous learning, and I just want to make sure that we're clear that families know, and I've been getting this question a lot in the community, and I'm sure you guys too, that synchronous learning means that we're learning at the same time, everybody's learning at the same time. So asynchronous means they're doing something separate, then they're all kind of doing something different or independently learning. And so it sounds like there's going to be a little bit of both of that, but a lot of synchronous. So meaning that kids are going to have much more of a schedule than they had in the past with this model. So more rigor, more instruction, more access to teachers, which is awesome. I had some questions just along. You guys mentioned that you're going to divide by alphabet. And I was wondering if there was consideration with dividing by, and I know you guys have Infinite Campus now, or we do as a district, so we can do these through Infinite Campus. But are we taking in consideration families with kids with different last names in the same household? And so, yeah.
So one of the things, the districts that we've been working with that are following the same sort of thing is, if this is approved, putting out a form to get those to capture those families and capture those students, and then bringing them on site at the same time that their siblings would. That's one of the reasons why we didn't split by grade level or anything else. We wanted families to be able to have a consistent schedule together. So that would be one of our first considerations.
So it's one of the priorities when setting that schedule.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Okay, and then second priority, when we do stuff like hybrid learning, I believe our goal is to reduce the access rate that kids have. So we have more social distancing, we have less kids in the building. It also keeps our kids in the learning mode longer than just going from nothing to everything and all that kind of stuff. So. And so when you guys are working on that and you're looking at classrooms, are you going to have to refigure some schedules based on the A-B model, or will they be pretty equal split? This is all stuff I know you guys can do behind the scenes ahead of time, but.
So at the middle school, it really is almost, I think there's 2 classes that I will have to move around, and there's only 2 classes. All of the rest are a pretty even split right down the middle. I mean, and there may be a +2 in one and a plus or a -2 in another. I'm not going to be so concerned about that. It'll be those that are very lopsided, and right now there's only 2.
Awesome. Okay. And then I love the developmental approach of keeping 6th graders in the building longer. They need it. They're at transition age. Did we consider that for 9th graders, being that they're also at that transition age?
We did. One of the main reasons we elected to do it specific with 6th graders is because their off-campus learning looked drastically different last year. The 5th graders did choice boards at the intermediate level, which was so anathema to what we did 6 through 12 in terms of asynchronous learning and checking in with office hours. We felt like the 8th graders was a cohort with a very strong foundation. They came from the middle school. We worked very closely, our teacher groups worked very closely last year so that the integration could occur within a week that we're,
Sure.
the week that we have guaranteed versus having a 2-week period.
Awesome. And then one of my other questions is regarding athletics, and I don't know if you guys are, if this is an okay time to bring it up, but if we go into a hybrid type model, does athletics, is there anything different with athletics, or do we continue with that as we go, or as we are? And I shouldn't just say athletics, I also mean activities and all that kind of stuff.
It's one of the things I think we need to look at. Matt or Mr. Smith and I were talking about it earlier. I think there's a difference between cohorting and de-densifying. And I think the cohorting is part of the hybrid model. The bigger plus for us is de-densifying the buildings, de-densifying classrooms. It allows us to have, at the high school level, roughly 50 kids in lunch. So we can keep that 6-foot distance. We'll be able to maintain the 6-foot distance in just about every single classroom. I know, having watched Matt work with our coaches, they're already working on seeing dance, seeing cross country. They're already working on those 6-foot distance protocols. So I think that's going to be something that he would need to work with his coaches and probably families closer to the sporting season to say, is this going to disrupt transportation to and from practices? How can we support those things?
Okay. So our goal would be to be able to keep those activities and athletics going as long as we can continue to get kids there and yeah.
Yeah, going to the hybrid model, our goal initially would be to keep athletics and extracurriculars rolling as long as we can. We realize that might put some speed bumps in some people's plans for transportation. If it's a blue day and you're playing an extracurricular, how do you get in for practice? And we're gonna have to offer flexibility for each activity and what that looks like. But our plan is to keep people involved as much as possible, even if we have to go to the hybrid model.
Great, and I really appreciate that. I heard you guys, multiple people bring up the transportation and the barrier to getting here, and some of our most vulnerable kids that athletics and activities really impact and stuff. We'll probably have more of those barriers, so whatever we can do to get them here and have access is awesome. And then I was wondering elementary-wise and intermediate school-wise. So we talked middle school, high school. I understand that that's kind of pretty common that they're the first ones to kind of look at that hybrid model because developmentally they can handle it. But there is also a possible need for elementary and intermediate to go to a hybrid type model if we follow the Minnesota guidelines, which it sounds like we're going to talk in the future. So are we at that point yet of coming up with plans for that, or is that something that, do we have thoughts on, are we thinking about hybrid for younger kids and stuff?
Yeah, we have discussed that at length. At this point, the primary reason that we're looking at for the secondary was to de-densify. So with the middle school kind of from the SDS study where it said it's a best building facility for 2 grades and no more, we knew that, again, the rationale for this is to try to stave off contributing or having the external COVID virus leach into our buildings. And so if we can cut the population in half, again, during an outbreak, so there's going to be a metric of when we do this. At the high school, it would drop the attendance or enrollment from 400 to 200. And so when we looked at the enrollment for the intermediate school and the elementary, which are already at 230, and had big square footage, we know that most secondary students can be at home unsupervised. Some parents might want to be there, but we realize that they could be home and not supervised. When you get into elementary and the intermediate, that gets to be a little bit more risky. But in today's report from the Department of Health, they are still saying that transmission and rates for students 0 to 10 are dramatically different than secondary students. Some of that is behavioral. Obviously, secondary students have transportation or can do that. They also participate in extracurricular. That does then go across cohorts. And so at this point, we were looking at the amount of work and feedback included the whole administrative team, but obviously Josh and Kyle took the lead. We will And we'll kind of pursue it if we see that the rates continue to stay high. But we believe that we can manage most of this without having to do the hybrid at intermediate and elementary. And at some point, we know that we will be off-campus learning likely for all. And we have new software and new protocols and some training that will be going on that started this summer and will be provided to our teachers on August 24th.
And then my very last question really was just, and I know it was in our technology thing on the computers with the leases and stuff, but are we hoping that we can get some devices, make sure all of our middle school kids have devices? And then when it comes to streaming classrooms, I know we just bought new stuff for that. Our typical Wi-Fi is able to handle all that if multiple families are streaming classrooms at the same time.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, we should take the opportunity. Kyle and Andy have done an amazing job. The amount of technology, both hardware and software they've added this year in 4 buildings is astronomical. So I don't know how they're managing it. And the demands that we're all making of them are a lot. So, and I think we'd all go crazy without them because none of this is possible without the tech.
Right.
However, first off, the computers the one-to-one is pretty integral to making this a possibility. The 30 hotspots that were already purchased by the district also helped to get us closer. I think per site we each had about 30 students or 30 families who were internet dependent on a different source. The last thing that I think this really helps us with is if you look at the end of Monday, it says high need groups are on site. And so we know socioeconomic challenges are very real for some of our families. We know that even beyond that, some areas of Prescott or the surrounding area just don't have internet. So those internet, I guess, desert areas, those families, we would deem as potentially high need to be on site more than just the 2 days that their cohort has. If the hotspots don't work for them, if the Chromebooks aren't enough, we have that latitude with this model. So I think we've got multiple ways to address those issues, which is what I like about this model. And hopefully everyone has a chance to get kind of that equitable learning out of it.
Well, thank you guys. So those are my big questions, and I also just want to say that it's, I think, really pretty amazing to see not just here, our whole country, right, but here specifically come up with these new ways of learning, new ways of doing business, and I foresee in the future that some of this stuff doesn't need to go away, right? We're definitely learning ways of doing things that are hitting our kids at where they're at in this kind of technology era, as well as the ability to learn at home and stuff. So it's a ton of work. I know you guys I can only imagine how much time you guys put into this, and it's not, I'm sure, ever going to end this year. So I really thank you guys. It looks awesome. There's going to be, I'm sure, 1,000 bumps and learning along the way, and I just, we're all in this together. I hope our community's been really supportive, and I think ultimately our families just really want our kids to have access to learning and stuff. So I really appreciate what you guys have done to try to give our kids more access to that. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Tanya. Vicki?
Tanya had a lot of questions, and I think they got answered. But the one thing I want to say is the parents that I work with in Minnesota, there's a lot of them that for months have been wondering, what are we going to do? I don't know what's going on. And the fact that all of you had put in so much time and effort early on to make plans on how you were going to get kids back in school is greatly appreciated. I can only imagine the parents around here are thankful that the last couple board meetings, if they've tuned in, they've actually heard stuff. We've got stuff put on the website for them. So they know months ahead what it might look like, where we're headed. So this is greatly appreciated, the amount of time and effort you guys have put into this.
Thanks, Vicki. Steve?
And my colleagues at Stage Right had some great comments. Thanks for the questions, Tanya. Those are really insightful, and a couple of them you took from me, but that's okay. I just want to understand the decision metric. So it's both internal factors and countywide numbers, correct? So if we are not having issues here, but the county spikes, that's going to affect what happens here regardless. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. I mean, if you look nationally and you see what's happening with schools that are returning, I think there's probably a good chance we're going to end up at level 3 at some point this fall, unfortunately. And they're right. The planning you guys have done, that's been a concern of mine all along. Is Dr. Scusa has talked for months about being here 100%, but what are we going to do when reality hits? And I think the administrative team, along with the teachers, have done a great job of planning for this. I know for a lot of teachers, it's very stressful. A lot of these folks have taught for a long time. They've done kind of the same things every year. The end of last year was different. This year is going to be a lot different. I'm sure you're all aware of that. But I don't know how the board, I don't know what we can do more to support that, but just stay aware of it. And if there are things that we can do to help, because it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough with the changes that are going to be happening. But we're lucky enough to have a pretty darn good administrative team here to kind of manage those things. So I don't really have any other questions. I think the plan's good. It's kind of fly by wire. So we'll just keep adjusting and adapting as we have to. So thank you.
Pat, I hope this is simple, Kyle. So your example of 6th grade, if we deem that, hey, we need to go off-site because of spike in numbers, but we're advocating that the 6th grade stay on site for additional 2 weeks, what are some of the things that we do to keep that whole group safe? Is it just simply spread out in additional classrooms that have not been available, or how does that get handled?
Yes. So, and we're only going to advocate that if this has to go into effect within the first couple of weeks of school.
Right.
And if that has to go into the first couple of weeks, then yes, we're going to use some of our other teachers. We're going to be able to spread out a little bit. We really will have a lot of other spaces to potentially use.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases we'll just have to run business as normal, but we'll take that calculated risk in order to get them to the spot that they need to be for that transition to off-campus learning to the middle school. I mean, the middle school is a huge transition anyways. These kids are coming in as dependent on everyone and everything, and we're trying to get them to work up towards and be ready for high school by the time they leave 8th grade. And having them at least on board and in the classroom for a couple of weeks rather than just that 1 week, we believe will be pretty integral.
Sure, great. My next question, and I hope this is fair, whoever wants to grab it can grab it, but probably, it could be one student, it could be our entire population. At some point in time this year, you guys are going to have to deliver off-campus learning to somebody. You've probably already answered this question, but can you summarize, what were some of the main challenges last spring, and how that model looks different this year to provide a different experience, both for the students and for your staffs?
Well, speaking from the middle school, and I know that the high school probably had some of the same ones, is when we went to off-campus learning last year, we had zero access to our building. We sent teachers home with Chromebooks that their cameras sometimes worked and microphones sometimes worked, and to no fault of anyone else's, but we were asked to essentially pack up and leave in a couple of days. So we weren't set up technology-wise, for one, and so now teachers are trying to teach at home using scratch pieces of paper, holding it up in front of their Chromebook, and it just wasn't the most ideal situation. The change this year is when we go to off-campus learning or we go to the hybrid model here, we're going to be in the hybrid model, especially they're going to be in the classroom, the teacher will be, with all of the technology that we've invested in, with everything at their fingers, just more tools that they're able to use, rather than when they're at home and in their home office that not everyone has those same tools. So that's a big difference for the teachers. When we go off campus also, we're staying in a synchronous model. And that synchronous model, the kids follow a schedule. All kids will log in at whatever time their schedule says that they need to log in, and teachers can rely on that as their given schedule for the day. Where last year we went asynchronous with everything, or almost everything, and they were hoping that students would log in. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't, and again, there was a lot of disconnect there. Well, with that synchronous learning, that live learning, essentially, it's live happening at that time, it's just going to make everything flow a lot smoother, go a lot smoother. Kids will be able to ask questions, and it'll be more along those regular school hours than anything else.
Yeah, I think Tanya probably summarized it best when she said some of the things that we're creating now probably won't go away. It's things that have been best practice or good practice in teaching in the 21st century that we haven't been pushed into doing. Last year, I think asynchronous was the best we could do in the very short time that we had to create it. Unfortunately, our staff, at least across the board, there had been no instruction for them, no professional development on how to do that. I'm proud of them because they learned a lot in the 3 months that we did that. But the more and we needed to professionally develop too. We weren't equipped for it, to help them. I think that's kind of been our goal over the summer is how do we get better to help them get better? We now know that the structure or the lack of structure in an asynchronous environment that's consistent 5 days a week is probably not great for kids. We know that, and we've always known that immediate feedback to kids and their learning and immediate instruction in front of their teacher is the best model. But asynchronous wasn't able to get us there. So the synchronous model that we're proposing, whether it's the hybrid model or everyone goes off-site, really circumvents some of those problems. Now, we'll still have some problems with if a student doesn't want to log in, Mr. Igo can't march to his house and get him to log in. But I think that's why the hybrid model for us is so important in instruction, because we get to see that student live 2 days a week and get them caught up. I don't think students will become untethered like some of them did, thinking, well, this is going to go on for an unknown amount of time, so why would I log in? Why would I do my work? Whereas there's a very clean structure that we're going to create for students. And then I think for our staff, we've both been communicating out consistently really since June. Here's what this model is going to look like for off-campus. We're going to go with a synchronous model. Here's some professional development that you can do. Stanford University, or Stanford Virtual High School, has put on PD all summer on teaching online. We've been pushing that out to teachers. We've gotten much better with Google. Again, Andy and Kyle have been amazing. So in terms of Google Classroom, utilizing that as our learning management system, finding and utilizing a virtual whiteboard so teachers can teach the same way they do or very similar to how they do to students offline as they have face-to-face. All of those things we've learned over the summer or late in the spring. And I think it's taken this amount of time to figure out how those puzzle pieces fit together. I'm excited to see, because I think we're gonna solve a lot of the problems we had, and maybe some new problems will come up, but we'll tackle those as well.
Cool. Thank
And
you.
if-
One maybe just a shorter question. So because you said the word consistency, I'm sure you guys are looking at that, and I'm sure every building is different, but along with the development that the staff has been able to do, is there so you mentioned like a virtual whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm imagining 4 different teachers having 4 different places where kids have to log in and sign on. Is there some framework around that
Yep.
will hopefully make that easy?
Yeah, so I'll trademark them as the core 4 that we'll use right now. Google Classroom will become the LMS for secondary. It is the one-stop shop. No teacher will be allowed to use anything different as an LMS, because we heard loud and clear from families just not knowing where to look for certain things, or this teacher posts things here, this other teacher posts things here, sometimes was a barrier to continuing with their learning. So we've got Google Classroom. Integrated with that is the video tool Google Meet to facilitate that live synchronous learning. Jamboard is the virtual whiteboard that we'll be using. And that'll kind of facilitate the day-to-day synchronous instruction of anything that needs to be captured for notes. And I'm blanking. And that's part of the Google Suite as well. And Loom. So anything asynchronous, if you think about a lot of teachers that maybe you went to high school with, they did a lot of lecturing in class. I remember that too. One of the things we're asking our teachers to do is those days in front of kids are so valuable, we can't afford to lecture. We need to flip the script or flip the classroom. So if you need a lecture for 10 minutes, use a tool that we call Loom capture your lecture, capture your slideshow, doing that live, so students can watch that asynchronously when they're off campus. So that when they're in front of you face to face, those are dynamic activities. It's a lab, it's a discussion. You're carrying forward something they did off campus, so that they really get the benefit of being live with you as a teacher. And then those are going to be the core for our teachers. We might have some teachers who do things that are content specific for science, like a virtual lab, but those are going to be the tools that drive us this year.
Cool. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
And just, Pat, I'm given that question, I think it'd be fair, because we did a dramatic change also for elementary and intermediate. I'm just going to ask Michael and Sarah just to give you an update about what's different for K-5.
Yeah, you talk about what's different, then you talk about what's the same. So some of the things that at the intermediate school and the elementary that we're doing, we're not using Google Classroom, we're using Seesaw, which is more developmentally appropriate, thinking all the way down to 4K and kindergarten students being able to log in and get to a stream and being able to video record themselves responding to something versus trying to type something up, those sort of things. So we're moving, our platform is Seesaw. When you get into the upper grades of 4th and 5th grade, then that's kind of that transition to Google Classroom. Seesaw will still be our platform for communicating with families, posting lessons, directing them to their Google Classroom. Last year we used Class Dojo, and Class Dojo isn't designed for that, but it was what we had, and it worked as good as it could. Seesaw will be replacing Class Dojo. It's sort of Dojo and Google Classroom together at a developmentally appropriate level. Other things that we'll be using, Google Meets, Jamboard, and then Loom or Screencastify, which is the same sort of program, to deliver those same sort of things that they're seeing at the high school level. So you can see there's sort of a continuum of a lot of things in Seesaw at the elementary, 4K level, and as they ramp up towards middle school, we start that transition into the Google world with them, just because of the tools and things that Google can do that Seesaw can't.
Sure.
But again, preparing them so they are prepared when they go to the middle school, to be able to take on that. We didn't do as much synchronous live teaching at the intermediate and elementary last year, and this year that's one of the things that parents said we need more of that support. We're the academic coach at home with our kiddos. They have to be more involved than at the secondary level, but they themselves need more coaching as well. So that's one of the things that we're looking to provide even to our teachers or families that are off campus starting out the year, is that we will have at both levels where we will have live synchronous lessons and a classroom teacher available to our families throughout the day.
And I think an important thing to note too is Seesaw isn't just valuable for when we're off campus. The teachers have been being trained in Seesaw already, and they're coming up with ways that they're going to use it within the classroom when we're on site, get the kids used to it. And it's something that I imagine even when the dust settles and we aren't in and out of off-campus and on-campus instruction, that Seesaw will stick around and will be used in our classrooms on a regular basis anyway. We just know that the districts that had Seesaw last spring, when they did go into off-campus learning, it was a pretty seamless transition because the kids were used to it from using it in the classroom. So we thought it was just the best model that we could go to for the elementary to help with those seamless transitions back and forth this year if we end up that way. And then just to support students learning when we're all back on site in normal times again. So.
Thank you very much. And also to both of you, because I know we had teachers coming in this summer to begin the training, and we'll be rolling that out on the 24th.
Dr. Scusa, I was wondering, I don't know how to ask this question necessarily because I'm not suggesting a change, but so I'll ask it this way and feel free to respond however you feel appropriate. But if we had time and we're in an ideal situation, would it be better to start the school year with the hybrid model just for the effort to keep less students in a classroom at a time?
That's actually a great segue, if you don't mind, because part of this discussion now is how do we make the decision about when we should be in a hybrid model?
Rick, before we go to that really quick, we talked a lot about like the safety of our students and trying to densify our classrooms and stuff like that. So essentially our students will have access to about half as many kids as they normally would. But I would like to take a moment just to talk about how this supports our staff safety, because we know our staff are much more susceptible to falling severely ill. And also we know we can't operate buildings without healthy staff in them as well. And so I'm working at a high school level too, and it's the same question, which is really, how does this help staff? Because they're still gonna be with the same amount of kids. They're not dedensifying. They might have more space around them, but they're still, and just so the public knows, I mean, at the middle school to the high school, they're seeing maybe 100 to 180 different kids a day, depending on the size of classroom. And I haven't really heard much about how the hybrid model helps keep our staff safe. And I just would like to take a moment and make sure we acknowledge that part of this as well.
And I'll let Josh kind of take that, but this has been a continuum of changes. So we went from semesters to trimesters. We went from multiple periods to 5. We've identified kind of locations for grade 9, 10, 11, and 12. So there's a lot of environmental arrangements that have been put in place. We've added additional lunch periods and worked with food service to make that happen. All of our teachers will have sanitizer solution in the rooms, and by dedensifying, the primary things that all students, as you can see from the pictures at the introduction and what we're doing here as a board, is that we will have to be masked. And so masks are critically important when you have people indoors, and then in addition, social distancing. And so by having 50% fewer students, it does give us the ability to at least ensure that 6 feet or more can occur, but there's also some adjustments that are happening with band, choir. And so you can also talk about the schedules.
Sure. So in terms of hybrid, in terms of direct teacher safety, the hybrid probably has the least impact compared to some of the other changes that we made in terms of schedule, the amount of transitions, the amount of total students that a teacher would see in a day. It does dedensify the building. If you work in a high school, you know what the standard, I think 29 by 22 classroom looks like. Having anywhere from 20 to 30 students in a classroom, 6 feet of space between everybody, especially the teacher, is not feasible. By doing this, it allows us to hit those metrics, but probably even more important for teachers, a lot of universities are calling it the teacher zone in front. They're saying it should be actually more than 6 feet. It allows us to expand that teacher zone. DHS came out with a document today, and one of the portions of it talked about the teacher staying in front of the room, students staying in their desk the entire time. If you can't meet some of those metrics, we know that that's not necessarily how good teaching looks. Dedensifying and bringing us down to somewhere in the 10 to 12 range for students per class not only gives us the physical distancing, it allows the teacher to move around a little bit more in the class while maintaining that distance from the students. So I think that's pretty important. The other thing is it gives us that Monday, and that Monday is really a staff free of physical student stay. There's still synchronous learning happening. I think the mental health of staff, a lot of people think about the physical COVID health of staff. I tend to think more about the stress and the social and emotional health of our staff. I think providing them, showing them that we have built in time for them to carry out this, I'm going to call it additional load that they haven't had in the past, will have a very palpable impact on how they view the profession, how they see us supporting them. And it also allows us to do a lot of the things that we can't do otherwise, which is do some of the professional development, touch base with them on a consistent weekly basis to see how they're doing, help them with technology needs that they might be experiencing. But other than that, the hybrid model really, it's more for students and it's more to dedensify students. Going down to the trimester model, teachers are going to see basically a third less kids during the day. There's fewer transitions. So I think those are things that we've tried to do, at least at the high school level, to mitigate things. I know Mr. Igo's got a cohort model which also helps teachers. So hopefully those things combined provides us with more safety. I know we'll work on I'll call them the minute logistics with staff next week. How do how do we, as a school community, work on disinfecting those high-touch areas? What are some practices we can do to protect the teacher in the room? What things can we do to protect vulnerable populations? So I guess that's the long answer to maybe a shorter question.
No, thank you. I think it's important that we acknowledge the staff side of this as well, so thank you.
Rick, did you want to cover the metrics?
Yeah, so this is kind of a two-part presentation because we first wanted to make sure you understood the logistics of what we're trying to put in place, the safety aspect for trying to stave off high rates of infection that might be in the community from overtaking our school. We believe that having students on site with staff is the most healthy and the most effective way to deliver instruction. But we also know we're at a time that might not be able to happen every single day or every single month. That's why we went to this hybrid. In addition, as we started to plan for this, we also know that there are going to be internal factors, and I think, Steve, you kind of mentioned that. We know that it could be the absenteeism of students. It could be the absenteeism of our staff. It also could be just the logistics of all of us to be able to get substitute teachers in, and also our bus drivers, if we have enough and we have a deep bench, but it could be that there are internal factors that would cause us to move to hybrid. One of the biggest factors that we knew in kind of as we prepared for this is we needed a metric, some way to be able to communicate to our community, to our staff, that there will be a point in time that we'll measure information. And when we have information that tells us that the incident rate is too high, we're going to transition into this hybrid. And I'll walk through that, but to Steve's kind of inquiry, which I thought was a good segue to this, we went back and forth about do we start under this model or not. A lot of it has to do with the history and that it's 5 months since we saw students and you saw some of the new programs that we're going to be using. And we have staff that are here. We thought that being able to get students face-to-face, that we would use those valuable days, August 31st through the first week of September, to be able to make sure that we check in with everybody from just their mental health, their physical health, and their academic situation, that we walk them through what a hybrid model would look like, making sure they understand if they're in the red or blue group, and then to be able to check on, again, face-to-face of any kind of technology issues that they might have so that we can continue to try to problem solve through this. From that, again, we were looking at a national model. We looked at some of our local districts and then the model that was released at the end of July in Minnesota. Absent any other information coming from Wisconsin, what we've tried to develop is the number of cases that fall into different 3 categories. Minnesota has 5, but once you get to over plus 30 per 10,000, it's a critical state, and we probably would be virtual for everybody. And that's a new level that DHS is promising to release next week. And again, I'll update you on that when that comes out. So given that information and kind of saying, can we use the time effectively that first 4 days? We are on the far right of the chart. What we're looking at is taking the information that's reported to DHS on positive cases. One of the things that we've been monitoring all summer is that you can look at Pierce County website, you can look at DHS, and you can look at DPI. I can guarantee you on any single day and any single hour, the information is close, but it's not the same. In addition, Pierce County does include information for contact tracing. So until a positive or negative test occurs, all family members are considered in the group. And so the numbers are a little bit higher until that information is confirmed. And so they'll backwards engineer that information. So to be clear, we're going to target where we get our information is from the DHS website, and it's released every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and it provides the number of cases that have occurred over the last 14 days. And it provides additional information for people about whether or not the trend is going up or down, what the trajectory is, what the activity level is, and they kind of do high, moderate, and low. And so that was kind of how we were benchmarking our decisions. What we struggled with is that some of our neighboring districts were looking at taking that data point and then identifying when it would be implemented. And so I wanted to say that on the far right side, our proposal to you is that we would use the Wednesday of the first week of school to take that first Wednesday indicator and apply it to the chart, which would determine whether or not we remain face-to-face or transition into a hybrid model or transition into virtual. So right now what we're looking at is a classification of anything below 10, 0 to 9 cases, we would be 6-12 face-to-face. If the burden rate was between 10 and less than 30, middle school and high school would go to the hybrid model with the asterisk that if it happened that first week, we would be asking 6th grade to stay one more week, the week after Labor Day, to make sure that they are fully supported in the new model and technology that we're using. If it gets to 30 or above, that is likely to be our virtual. And again, that would be internally what we're using. There are some external decisions that public health, we still are under the auspice of the decision or mandate of Pierce County Health Department, and also a soon to be released but not yet released information from the state. So what we would be looking at is, at this proposal, we want to have students on site for the first week. We would take our data point on September 2nd, and that it would, if it was above 10 or above, we would begin the hybrid model, which in this case would be September 8th. One of the things that I just wanted to point out is that when you look at the information that's reported, and it's reported as a burden, it is reported at 100,000 case or 100,000 population. So we always have to divide that number by 10. Last week, on August 12th, we would have been at 17. The number of cases has fallen this week, but we are currently at 16. So under those data points, we would likely begin at the hybrid level based on that information, and we're 1 week away from school opening, but the trend is going down. And one of the things that we're believe is that why we think we could open is that since July, we have had our daycare, Y-Care on site. Hearts, Hands, and Mind and New Adventures have been functioning and have had no positive cases of the students or childcare, and none of their employees. In addition, we've had our high school speed and strength, dance, and cross country started this week, and so far we haven't had any positive cases among our students. We are taking mitigating steps that we talked about, and that's why we would like to begin on site with the students, but follow the first data point being September 2nd. The last piece I wanted to kind of point out is in the blue box at the bottom. In order for us to be able to balance these transitions and make sure that we're not in, it takes a lot to shift to synchronous learning, and a lot of technology and a lot of support for our staff. And so I think our principals and myself really wanted to balance not only the workload, but also the stress level for our staff to make it a little bit more manageable than it had been in spring. And so under that kind of situation, we think by giving them the support and a model that they could point to. We're going to look at, if we make the decision, it would last for 15 days. It would be a 3-week shift so that families understand. It gives everybody the opportunity to organize around it, and it gives us the opportunity to try to continue to provide, avoid what I would say is a yo-yo or whiplash effect. Because it is re-engineering a lot, right? Just food service and custodians, and obviously in a hybrid, our buses are still running, right? It's just, and it further de-densifies the bus routes, but it is a lot of additional shifts for many different departments within the district. So I'll stop there and see if there's questions.
15 school days, right, Rick? Not 15 days?
15 school days, correct.
3 weeks, yeah. Just 2 quick things. So level 3, if we go to all students off-site, will staff be able to use facilities in the buildings to continue to teach?
Yes, we've, at this point, it would be our preference. We're still in discussions about, we understand that there are some faculty members that may have to also have childcare issues and things like that. So there's some both federal legislation, state restrictions on how we will deal with that, but our preference and our buildings would remain open. Technology would be here. If we have to accommodate for a parent or that has to both teach and be a parent, we will work with them to be able to execute.
I'm sure the district has some flexibility to work with that. So, but that's good to know, because I know in the spring that wasn't the case.
Correct.
And the other question was, when we talk about internal factors, you've got minimal internal school absenteeism, moderate, and significant. Is there a measurement for what those 3 terms mean?
Yeah, that was the hardest for us. A couple districts have put some things out there. The more we talked about it, it really comes out that this is trying to be a 6-12 model in 2 buildings. And if we had a flare up at the middle school, it would change the dynamic that we likely would be working with public health, and they would be directing us to either sequester a grade or the school. And so by putting a metric there, we thought it might confuse the issue that it's happening at the middle school and it really isn't impacting the high school. And so at this point, we were going to recommend that we didn't forecast exactly what it is, but understand that we're managing kind of multiple factors, right? If we have too many staff out at a site or a subject level, or I can't get substitutes, it's really going to create a local issue rather than an external issue.
I think that's a great explanation. I just wanted to, get some idea of why it was worded that way. Thank you.
Pat?
Not right now.
Vicki?
I don't think so.
And Tanya?
It's a lot of information.
This doesn't address elementary and intermediate again, and so I just continue to have that question. How do they work into this? And when it says red, it says Prescott Middle and High School, grades 6 to 12 off campus, and then it also says all students off campus. Does that include middle school and intermediate school there?
At that point, I would think it would. At this point, we're kind of holding for that last DHS new level, where basically we're looking at when you get to that high level, it's probably going to be that mandate that we're all virtual, kind of that off-campus that happened in March.
Yeah, but that's coming from like a state level, right?
Well, unfortunately, right now it's a little bit of it's guidance by the state, but always directed by
Sure. But if we were told to go completely offline, out, is that coming from the state level?
I can't completely answer that because of the Supreme Court ruling.
Sure.
But we are still under they do have the right from that Supreme Court ruling. DHS still does have rights over schools. Whether or not they'll challenge that again at the legislative level. But one guarantee is, even in the ruling, is that Pierce County will have and always will provide the oversight.
Okay. I just really, I appreciate that we adopted this model. Obviously, working in Minnesota, I'm pretty familiar with this model. I think it gives us some factors out there to help us predict. It makes it less subjective. Steve, I had the same question about numbers or minimal, moderate, significant, because it's very subjective then. But, you know, I also understand we're working with more than one building, and I get that too. But I just am wondering if we're being so proactive and putting something out there above and beyond what the state's requiring us to do, because we want our families to have some insight into how we're making decisions, why we would leave half of our district out of that, or 2 of our buildings anyways. And even though I understand that, you know, maybe they are less susceptible to sickness, maybe that age doesn't pass it on as much, maybe they're more cohorted, we still have many issues that might arise at that level too. And I think it's great that we have this for secondary. I wish that we also were considering our younger kids too, because it's not, again, just about kids. This is also about the staff within those buildings, and that's not being represented.
Yeah.
So that's just my thought and concern.
Yeah, and I think it's not something that we couldn't pursue. I also know that a lot of the feedback we were getting from families is just when we do distance learning, there's not a plethora of childcare, and that becomes a hardship also for families to continue to work. And so that it is a tough balance, and this model really is about de-densifying. One of the things that we didn't share, but I think we're very proud of, is that our class sizes are very low for a public school system. And so many of our early grades have 16 students around at kindergarten, and it gets up to about 22. So when you start to do a hybrid there, now you're looking at 8 to 10 students. And we think that the way that those buildings are, we're happy to pursue it. We just thought that at this point there were so many moving parts to get this out at the beginning of the year, kind of taking it in stages.
And maybe it's not hybrid, maybe we just go straight to this is when we're not gonna have school, but this isn't helping families with the kids that need to figure this out ahead of time more than the secondary kids know ahead of time that this is the path we're on, so it's likely my kid, I'm gonna figure out daycare. I mean, maybe we don't do hybrid. I also know some schools that are when they're doing hybrid with their elementary, they're taking space at the secondary buildings. And so they're able to spread out that way. So there's definitely ways we can keep them learning, and it looks different. I feel like we're falling short of some of our kids that probably need the most planning for when it comes to families, as well as, again, the staff that are in that building. So that's just, you know, my thoughts there.
Well, so with Minnesota and running their daycares that they had for essential personnel, with all of the press conferences and things that they had, the numbers that they had out at daycares or those sorts of places were not children. The numbers that they were getting were the staff. And so, I mean, I get that you know, we need to let everybody know if something's going to change, but I think at this point, without any direction from the state, and knowing that the kids, if everything is followed, and especially since Prescott has such low numbers in their classrooms anyway right now, and if there's that ability to spread stuff out, and we know that the teachers can manage their classrooms and all of that's been put in place, unless something drastically changes, I guess what the model is of having the kids go back 100%. We can plan for all kinds of what ifs, but I think if that's the plan right now, and I'm sure you've looked at it, if you need to make changes, what those changes could look like. But if there's no information to back it up that these kids need to not be in school because they're transmitting and their numbers are so high, I think that's the information we need to put out to parents. Like, we know that these kids are in a good situation. They're not the ones that are spreading, it's the staff. We're gonna only have X amount of kids in a classroom. You've done all the information with the recesses and the lunchroom and all of that sort of stuff, that it's all very well spread out. So maybe that's the information that needs to be put out, because if we get to the point where the elementary school is gonna be out, everybody's gonna be out, and it's gonna change everything. So I guess maybe that needs to be added, that at this point, this is what the elementary grades look like. And then if we have to close down and we give like a 5-day notice like we do with the hybrid learning for the other grades, then that's what we're gonna have to do. But I guess, I don't know, planning wise, if these kids are at the least risk, and it's more so the staff, and it's the staff that are the issues, I guess, I don't know what planning for that would even look like. I don't know, I just think that what you have in place right now is, for K through 5, seems appropriate for all the information that is out there that we've gathered from across the country, from Minnesota, whatever.
Thanks, Vicki. Any other comments from the board? I just want to, you guys have asked a lot of great questions, and I'm not going to belabor the point here, but I wanted to call out the staff. I know you guys have been living in this world for the last 5 months, trying to prepare for the beginning of the school year, and there's been probably 10,000 hours plus logged over the course of those months, and probably more than that, as Michael's rolling his head to try to do the math, I'm sure. But I appreciate you guys. Very, very good job. I think, you're positioning us well for the start of the school year, and obviously things are going to come up and we're going to have to make adjustments, and that's what we'll do. But this is a good look at it from a board level. Unless there's any other questions that the board wants to ask or clarify, I think we should move forward and make it a motion here.
I'll move to approve the proposed county and district metrics that would trigger implementation of a hybrid model of instruction at a secondary level for the 2021 school year.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Vicki, did you have any more comments on it? I thought maybe you heard something there.
Well, yeah, I have a question. Are we going with the county? I thought it was,
We're going with the DHS
we're going with
of
the
the county
DHS,
rates.
right?
But it's based on like county numbers, the burden per county.
But it sounds like, when you say county, it looks, the first thing I think of is Pierce County. So I'm thinking DHS numbers based on, Pierce County numbers based on DHS.
Is there a better way to clarify that then?
You're just saying Pierce County data then? Is that what you're suggesting?
Pierce County data, right?
From DHS.
From DHS,
Because you
reported
said-
at DHS level.
Recorded at DHS, because you said we get 3 different numbers that are very varying numbers. So we're going with the DHS reporting of Pierce County.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so that's the understanding of the motion that was made and seconded then? Is that clear?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. And thank you. Great dialogue, guys. We'll move on to number 7. Consider updated handbook language regarding furloughs and layoffs.
So we talk a lot about the positive things our staff are doing and the work that we're doing, and we realize that there are decisions that are really tough, that are likely to have to be invoked this year. A lot of that is likely due to the impact that COVID has had on local businesses and taxpayers. The Wisconsin Department of Revenue has not updated the last statewide collections. Part of that is due to the delay of accepting state taxes through July 15th. That report is likely to be coming out, they said, the last week of August, no later than the early September. It wouldn't surprise any of us if the revenue report, once it's released, that we'll see a major decrease in the revenues that were collected that will impact all budgets which the legislature has made commitments for the 2021 school year. The main question, I think, for us is that when, and that will impact our district budget. We just don't know exactly when. I can tell you what my gut level is, but it's not going to be that, and $5 will get you a coffee. I think what I can share with you is that the next biennium will be discussed in spring, and so I'm hopeful that we hold serve and are able to receive the revenues that are promised, but there is no guarantee. And if the revenue does not bounce back in the later periods, it is highly likely that we will see a next biennium that was different than what we were anticipating. So that said, we also know that we experienced having to do off-campus learning. We will know, depending on the year, and then also the kind of comorbidity with regards to the flu season, that there may be external factors of COVID, but also internal factors where we just don't have enough students on site or the faculty to manage our buildings. When that happens, there are some positions that are not deemed essential and would not be fully functioning. And so our handbook historically has had language about layoffs, and layoffs are legally termed as kind of more permanent. So we've been looking at and updating a proposal that would look at furloughs and layoffs and to update that into our handbook. We have shared that with Weld Riley, which is the district council. We just got that information back last night, so unfortunately I do not have a current version for the presentation other than to share what we initially had drafted and realize that some of the information or language is different. Let's just go with that one. What we're looking at is combining in the employee handbook to cover reductions and layoffs under the furlough process that would include hourly, salaried, and licensed staff when and if it becomes necessary based on the instructional model or the need to close our schools. It's not something that we take lightly. It's something that we have a lot of pride in sustaining our staff and being able to maintain our payments to all staff last year, but we're not any different than other businesses, and so we need to kind of update our handbook. I'm asking for the handbook language to be changed prior to the beginning of the school year so that both our HR and communication out to our staff can be made. It also does impact how payroll, so there's a lot of dominoes that need to be taken care of. My promise, to the degree that we can, as hard of a decision as this is, that we will be looking for if and when we can make accommodations or versus a layoff to make reductions or furloughs and call people back. Obviously, different amount of staff would be necessary when we go to a hybrid model. And so there are impacts for safety that we make or impacts that we make for instruction, but it also will have impacts on jobs. The employee furloughs, some of the language that we had in here was just to start with the importance or specialized expertise or training, the years of experience that the staff member has. Obviously, we'd be looking at that part within department or classification, and then additional criteria limited to specific or other support employees related to their experience outside of Prescott may also be considered. The timelines, initially, we put in some timelines that Weld Riley is recommending that based on how quickly the state might close or the Pierce County might close us, we can't really guarantee that we would give people 7 days or 2 weeks notice. So at this point, the recommendation by our legal team is that it would be no less than a 24-hour heads up, but we would, as soon as we knew, if we were informed, we would make advance notice as soon as possible, but no later than 24 hours. And then, again, just to kind of close out, that this would include all personnel, which wasn't in our handbook or was scattered in the handbook, so this is kind of raking it all together to include hourly, salaried, and licensed staff would fall under the furlough and layoff piece.
Steve, any questions?
No, I understand what we're doing here. I just, you know, it's interesting. Sometimes the school board's tasked with business decisions and to set policy. This kind of folds into both of those items, in my opinion. Hopefully we don't have to act and use this, but I think we need to have it in place. We've got a lot of financial uncertainty that is really out of our hands, so that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Pat?
Yeah, not to repeat what Steve said, but I think this is unfortunately a necessary lever that needs to be pulled. I think that there's probably going to be, you know, just regarding the timing of this, you know, perception's going to be poor on how this is looked upon. Rick, remind me, when we make changes to the handbook, how does that get communicated?
Well, under this circumstance, it'll be something that'll be going out by me tomorrow. We will also have that information going out through each of the principals, and then sharing and updating our handbook. Our handbook historically has been in the teacher, or all employees have access in Skyward. And so that's where they see their pay and sick days, vacation days.
Yep.
It's posted on there.
I'm just more referencing when we make changes to the handbook.
Yep.
I assume that there's usually some sort of a cascading message to,
Yes.
you know, that they're not, you know, left to check it daily for changes, right? So
Correct.
we're gonna make that message, and I guess all I want to say, and this is you know, probably goes without saying, but everybody probably in this room, and more people than we can think about, are probably, we talked about mental anguish and everything going on with COVID and people's jobs. I hope that this communication of this new necessary, you know, language in the handbook is handled with extreme grace, because timing is going to be, just the perception of it will be poor. So, but it's necessary. I understand that, but I'm sure it'll get done well. But it's it needs to.
Understood.
Yep. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Tanya?
We talked about this last time, so this is something I know we've been working on. Last year, we did not have to furlough staff, and I mean, we were able to keep people working and pay staff. But I know going into this year, knowing that we're looking at a whole year of kind of uncertainty, especially when it comes to finances, that this is something that protects us when it comes to money and where our money's going, but it also protects some of our staff as well. So it's promising that they do have a job when we're able to hire them back as well. So there's some promises within that furlough language that I think are important as well. So this has to happen. It's unfortunately kind of where we're at the time we're at. So no questions.
Vicki?
No, same thing. We need to have something in there with where we're at with the current situation, and yeah, hopefully we don't have to use it, but yeah, I think everyone is aware that, yeah, finances are definitely going to be up in the air with everything being shut down. So yeah, let's hope we don't have to use it.
Yeah, I know we spent a lot of time talking about the hybrid models and the different models, but one thing I just want to call out here, I think, you know, the goal of the school district really is in a safe manner within the parameters of the county and the state. We want to operate all of our buildings as close as possible to 100%, because in a safe way, right? But with that said, that the reason for that also is, you know, it keeps people working, and we employ a lot of people, and this is one of the, well, this is the biggest business in Prescott. So I think that as a school district, as a school board, I think this one of our main goals is to operate as close to 100%, get as many kids in the school as possible in a safe manner, because it also, as a byproduct of that, it keeps people working. And hopefully we don't have to pull any triggers like this year. So, yeah, I think everything else was said. Thanks. Let me say that. Does anybody else have anything to add before we move on? We'll take a motion.
I'll move to approve addition of furlough and layoff language to the employee handbook.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. On to item 8, annual meeting.
Yes, so in Wisconsin, once a year, all electorate are invited to an annual meeting. There are 2 options. The annual meeting each year can specify the exact date in which it'll happen. I think it was either 2 or 3 years ago, we kind of shifted to this model that gave the board an opportunity based on a lot of things of just when does the audit occur. And obviously with COVID, it's very thankful that we didn't have to rearrange it. So you have the right to set the meeting. It has to be done before October 1st. We are recommending that our regular board meeting, September 16th, be the date on which we have the annual meeting, and we would shift our regular board meeting to the Wednesday after. So the proposal by administration is that September 16th, starting at 6 p.m., would be the annual meeting. It is a public meeting. It would be held in the Performing Arts Center, where we're televising from today. And all are welcome for that annual meeting where we cover the budget. We also would have a business items with regards to some waivers in the business section that the board would be considering September 23rd with regards to some waivers we'll be putting forth on instructional minutes, licensure, and any other waivers that would be required, like graduation credits that we did last spring. We also will have 3 guests, School Perceptions, Baird, and our architects to update the community on some of the work that you've been doing for 2 years.
All right. If September 16th works for everybody, we can make a motion otherwise.
Works for me. I move to approve the annual meeting to be scheduled for Wednesday, September 16th, 2020 at 6 p.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. All right, on the information discussion, item 1 is work session update.
Yes. Well, on August 11th, we had a workshop with School Perceptions, which is the company that we have been working with to create a survey. The survey is regarding information about our work to date with regards to SDS architects and the infrastructure. We met for an hour and a half, and you were able to kind of understand the methodology, meet Sue Peterson, who was our liaison and target person. She gave a little bit of history with regards to the company and background. We kind of went back over the methodology, and just for our community, you should be receiving our first newsletter, Cardinal Corner, and that'll be hitting all individuals in the community this week. The methodology that we're choosing for our community-wide survey is a paper, 8-page portfolio that will be mailed to every household in the Prescott School District. Part of that is we wanted to make sure that everybody saw and heard all the information about the work that's been done by the board, by Mike Hoyka with regards to facilities, and then SDS Architects that was presented August 19th. I want to share kind of the timelines with you, and let's see. Of course, that was the one I didn't set up ahead of time, so I apologize. Bear with me as I pull this up and recast. So the point of our work session was to be able to see the survey. We were on version 10 as of the 11th of August, and we are on version 15. Today is August 19th, and we're going to show you one of the pages with regards to how the descriptions of our facilities are, and we just wanted to check the language because some of the language has changed since version 10. We just wanted to inform everybody that we'll continue to update the drafts, and then we'll be putting it in your packet on September 17th, and then bringing it forward to you on the 23rd, which will be the new board meeting. Once it's finalized, it will go to the printer, and it will be mailed out starting October 1st. The paper survey that hits every household can be mailed back, and it will have a addressed envelope that will go back to the survey company, not to the district. If any of the community members has more than one person that would like to take the survey, we will have additional surveys on hand, and the information will be posted both on our website, communications that we put out to our families, but also on the paper copies. And so those will be mailed out to additional people. Not only will it be on a portfolio of 8 pages, but it also will allow you to answer and take the survey online. So whatever medium you feel comfortable in answering, it can be done by paper and mailed in, or it can be done online. The idea would be that we will start with our staff, and 100% of our staff will be asked to take the survey. Then it will go and cascade to our families, and then it will hit all of our parents. There are questions on page 2 that will outline kind of the demographics of the individual, so that individuals that may or may not have students in our schools, may or may not be affiliated with our schools, will be able to identify that, how they get information, so that you are able to receive a report by age, demographic, male, female, and whether or not they're affiliated, a parent, a grandparent, or not affiliated in any way. That information we're looking at to be ready for the board in November, and then allows the board to have a conversation with Sue Peterson from School Perceptions about how to interpret that report. It's highly likely that we may need a work session somewhere either prior to November 18th or immediately after. So that's just, I want the board to be aware that as the year unfolds, you may want to move it before or after, and we'll just make sure that Beth and I stay in touch with Steve and Mike on where that falls. The goal would be that the board would have information about the infrastructure and some of the enhancements that we're looking at, which is based on priorities that the board set in April, which was to establish safe and secure and controlled entranceways at Malone Elementary and the intermediate school. And so that information, along with tax impact, would be provided. And we are looking at having that information available at the annual meeting on September 16th. And Baird is the group that has worked with you historically. Our goal is to have Lisa Vossen describe for you kind of the tax impact. She is going to be doing that virtually, though. So Barrett is not able to travel. Sue Peterson and SDS, I believe, both will be on site, but I'll confirm that with you. At this point, just see here. Okay, so we went through that. The primary point of using a paper survey is to make sure that we inform the whole community about the proposals and to tell our story. And so page 3 will walk them through 5 subheadings about our infrastructure, some of the enhancements, some of the cost deferments, and we'll be asking people to evaluate 2 pathways. Are we going to go left or are we going to go right? I want to be clear, just so that the listening public understands, is that we have 4 buildings in our portfolio. We are committed to keeping all 4 buildings. Pathway 1 will be looking at some grade reconfigurations, and under the grade configurations, we are proposing to move our grade 3 students back into the elementary and combine that with we currently have 4 classrooms, and we usually have 4 classes or 4 classrooms per grade, so it's an easy fit. Some of the adjustments to that building would include a cafeteria to give the gymnasium full function for PE, and then to update our STEM and library area. We also want to look at the possibility of using all 4 buildings, but making 3 instructional. And so there is a proposal or a pathway that would look at a 4-8 option, and using the current middle school facility as a district office, district service center with community education, PCR, and then also our gathering space located there. And that story will be told in that survey with some additional updates. We hope to be able to kind of make sure that everybody understands the intent of the 8-page design, what the pathways 1 and 2 look like, what the cost impact would be for each of those proposals, and then to identify the community understanding and willingness for that financial investment in our services and programs. The end of the meeting, we kind of looked page by page, and you kind of looked at word choices and things like that. And I would like to just focus in on the one page that was descriptive of some of the infrastructure. And one of the things that's happened since version 10 and where we are currently is we thought it was too wordy initially, and we used a lot of technical terms about galvanized pipes and things like that. And so we took out some things, and we want to make sure that we didn't gut it too much, that some of the substantial things. And one of your colleagues caught that what was the precipitating event was that our roof at the intermediate school is beyond its life expectancy. And that's a large, what I would say is a generational cost. It's over $1 million. And it was no longer in that section. So I'm going to pull that up and post that. You all have it on your screens, but I'll at least cast it for our listening audience or people that come back and see the recording. So what we did is put it side by side. We have kind of the subheadings that appear, and it was under aging buildings and infrastructure. And I think we just wanted to kind of show you version 6, 7, and where we are. The pathways, don't get confused on that, because we flip-flop the pathways. That isn't the piece that we wanted to focus on, but it's really about the language in that first paragraph. If it's sufficient, any word choices that you would want, and obviously I think the omission of the roof is substantial, and we want to make sure that that gets added. Also, if there's any feedback from the board about just the experience or thoughts or takeaways from the 11th, that might be helpful as well.
So let's start there. I'd like to just go around and give everybody an opportunity to just comment on the work session. So Pat, I don't know if you want to kick it off or Any comments from the work session? Any takeaways?
No, I thought it was great. I personally accomplished what I wanted to get out of it. Good comments. I've read version 14 and see the changes that we discussed, you know, being updated. So I think it's on the right path.
All right. Steve, anything to add?
No.
Tanya?
No, it was informational. I think one of the things that I like, and we discussed this when we chose to go this route with the survey, was that it's an opportunity to teach the public also about what's happening within our schools, how we're using our buildings, what we need to do. So I really like that the first couple of pages really are setting up where we're at and what we've been doing. I think that's, it's an audience, we're sending something to an audience, and I really appreciate that information in there. So I'm looking forward to getting the results, which are really coming up pretty quick, so it should be good.
Vicki?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. It clarified some of the questions that I had and some of the things that Pat had asked that are a lot clearer, I think, in this last version. So, yeah, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I think the survey, the drafts have come a long way from the drafts that we first started looking at to the last one, and the survey is really starting to take shape. I did pull out version 7 on that one, the survey comparison document that Rick has. I think it's up. Yeah, this one right here. And I just wanted to point it out and bring it up to the board. One of the earlier versions of the survey had kind of the catalyst with the intermediate school roof exceeding the service life. I'm just wondering, I wanted to get it out there to see if anybody thought that should be something that we should keep in the survey as kind of an informational piece for the public to kind of understand one of the larger expenses that we have in front of us that will likely be over $1 million, and it may require an ask from the public. And I wanted to get your guys' perspective on it, which is why this is up here. So if anybody wants to jump in here, feel free.
Well, I'll jump. My comment, and I might have even made a comment that maybe flew in the face of that during our work session. It felt at this point in time that we were getting really, really specific on infrastructure, you know, updates, and the survey wasn't really pointing to an option that was a deferred maintenance kind of option only. Although there are a couple of questions that would indicate that they would only, support a smaller referendum. So I felt personally to get in to some of that granular level it just wasn't the right place. If we want to reference the document and Rick, I actually thought that was being done at some level, but maybe not. That we were going to reference that Mike's document that I think SDS even put eyes on and validated.
Yes.
I thought that was maybe the approach somehow.
Yeah, so there are kind of two parts. One is the first page of the letter from the district kind of explaining, asking for participation. We'll have a link to the first report by SDS and the infrastructure that was presented to all of you in August 2019. I think the other piece is, as we cross-reference, Mike Hoyka is looking at this and the different versions. I think personally, I kind of my own just oversight with everything we're looking at is that the roof is obviously one of the biggest price tags, and it's a lot of square footage. I would recommend to the board that you include it in the latest version and keep it, because it is one of the things that I think most people get, right? You have to re-shingle, you have to re-tar, and they're 20 to 25 year life expectancies, and we know that it's beyond that. And we already show certain aspects of leakage and things like that we continue to repair.
Sorry to interrupt, Rick. I guess I'm just confused at where are we going to show that? We're looking for some input on some long range facility options, and we're asking people to provide input based on that. We're not showing an option 3 or a third option, which would be just covering deferred maintenance type costs in here. So I'm confused of, you know, are we asking for money, or are we asking for input on how to spend money? And I feel like we're sending mixed messages here. I don't dispute the fact that this could be put in here somewhere. I'm not seeing the right place to do it.
I'm with Pat on this one. There's not that option, and it sounds like if you put that in there, then there's gonna be that third option where, yeah, we're asking about these two ideas for down the road, like this is what we wanna do for the future. And we know that has to happen. So I thought that we had discussed that in our work session, that was a have to situation.
Right,
But it's still an ask.
I think we had talked about somehow embedding a message in here that whether anything was supported or not, we still may be asking at some point in time, you know, for deferred maintenance, you know, type costs. And I thought the response that School Perceptions gave, and that, at least at the time I nodded my head, was, you know, there's an option here to say that, you know, I would support a smaller amount.
Exact-
And that would lead us then to, you know, start digging into what that looked like.
Sure. And that is accurate.
You know, I look at, we say in this survey, where is it here now, but it's, we are committed, here it is, on long-range facility options. Guess it doesn't have a page number, page 5, that we are maintaining all 4 of the district's buildings. So we're committed to having a roof that works. You know, whether option A or B is chosen here, pathway 1 or 2. So I'll
Okay.
go ahead and listen now. But
Yeah, I wanted to bring it up to have a little dialogue on it. I'm fine leaving it out. It makes, you know, your rationale makes sense to me. I'm good with. If you guys are good with it, then I think we can leave it the way it is.
Well, is there a value in asking a third question, and this is probably a good question for School Perceptions, which is if people would support just absolutely required maintenance stuff, like a roof? I mean, that's a whole nother question, almost like what Pat's kind of mentioning, right? Is we're giving 2 pathways, which have to do with what's happening with the building, but we're not, I mean, regardless, this has to get replaced. It's the roof.
Right. I think, if you recall, I think as Sue kind of framed it, is that one, you want to kind of inform the community of your priorities, and the strategic direction and the mission vision are going to be listed on page 2. Some of the things that you prioritized was this safety and well-being of students, and so a high priority also is understanding that our checkpoint or offices are in the middle of 2 of our buildings. So I think what Sue would kind of suggest here at this point is that you're educating the community about, both staff and the community, about the status of our buildings, some of the priorities that you've deemed and put forth, and then ask for their feedback. And then as you look at the responses and the disaggregation, you'll have information that will allow you to make an informed decision kind of in that November, December point. So I think she's saying trust the process. Put out what you are advocating for and what your strategic direction embraces, and then see if we're making the connection and explaining it, our rationale as best we can, and then come back and always can tweak or even re-survey or make a decision that's different about going or not going, or going in a different direction, November, December, and January.
So, Mike, do you want to have that added, possibly about the roof? Just back into the aging building infrastructure section, says additional repairs and or replacement. and list the roof right behind that?
I'm good with the way it reads right now. I just wanted to kind of understand the thought process of kind of how we got to the version 14 wording, and we can leave it as is. I agree. This is, when you think about this piece, this document, yes, it is a survey, but it's an informational piece on the strategic direction, the long-term direction we want to take our buildings. And we're asking for input from the public on that, as well as, how much would you be willing to support now? And I think that accomplishes that. So I mean, from my perspective, I'm good leaving it as the way it is. We can maybe bring it up in our next session with school perceptions and just kind of see if there's any way to kind of to put it in somewhere. Maybe it's not in this section, but maybe we can have another go at it. But I think the way it reads right now with the aging building infrastructure section, that's fine. So, are we good with that? Any other questions or comments on the survey? We can try to keep moving here. All right, let's go to item 2, athletic director update on fall sports.
Probably one of the most anticipated presentations. It drives a lot of email, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Thanks for having me. I'm here tonight just to kind of give some updates of where we're at with athletics from the WIAA. That's our governing body for most of our high school activities, the Middle Border Conference, and the Pierce County Public Health, and everything that's kind of going on. So looking at it, we're having a 3-tier approach. Tier 1 would be our high school activities, our high school athletics here for the fall. And then tiers 2 and 3 would be our middle school and PCR, because they're also impacted. And all of them, I think we all feel are important, and we're looking at for ways here to navigate this way. I got the picture there, the overview of the rivers there coming together. Photo credit, I do not know, either Dallas or I'm sure he would know who took that photo. The river there, it's a fluid situation, always subject to change. I think that's important to know. We have to be flexible with everything that we do. And then the confluence, it's kind of people all coming together here with all the different things with athletics. So basically here to keep you informed and then look at potential decision points that we could have here in the future moving forward. So if you have any questions, stop me. I'm not going to read the slides to you, but I wanted to get you all the slides with the information and some links there so you have access to it at a one-stop shop if need be. So kind of since we last met, WA Board of Control has met twice and come out with some different rulings, changes, and whatnot. A couple of the big ones are looking at sport exposure levels on a matrix that they kind of put together. They voted, the Board of Control, to move cross country and girls golf to an August 17th start. And so that pushed girls golf back a week, whereas cross country was scheduled to start that day anyway. And then football and volleyball, cross country and girls golf both are considered lower level in terms of that exposure risk. And then they took football and volleyball, where football being a high level exposure risk, volleyball being a moderate level exposure risk, and they pushed those back to September 7th start dates, just to kind of give people more time to get their bearings underneath them, maybe get school started, and then look at some decision points with numbers and cases and whatnot as they move forward. The dance team, which has been doing workouts here this summer, post July 6th, they have their own association that comes out with recommendations and guidelines and whatnot, so they don't fall under that WA umbrella, though they do fall in line with some of the theories and recommendations that they put out there. Then also with the Board of Control, what they did do, a big point, is they adjusted the winter and spring seasons, and they added an alternate fall season if that's needed. And you're probably seeing in the news that there are some conferences that are going to go to that alternate fall season, and we'll touch more on that a little bit later. But these dates that they do set out, they impact everybody, regardless if you go to the alternate fall season or not. And so that does move some seasons around. It does condense them a little bit, and I'll keep you in the loop with that. So basically, the seasons are adjusted, but regardless, the number of maximum contests that you can participate in does stay the same. So talking to some of our coaches, talking to Coach Johnson today about basketball, the basketball season for boys, could get shortened potentially by roughly 2 weeks. So we're going to look at having to reschedule some games because we do have conference games right now that fall outside of that end date, and we may have to move around and be creative with some of our scheduling. So that's still in the works with getting our conference games set first, and then non-conference after that. We can still play a maximum schedule, but it's going to eat up quite a bit of practice time. So that's going to be kind of a program by program decisions that we'll make together to make sure that we're not beating up our coaches, our student athletes, everyone involved too much, that we're keeping health, and safety at the forefront there. Any questions on that? All right, next slide. We should have like a signal or something. Some health guidelines / considerations that the WA put out here for the fall. This replaces their summer guidelines that came out earlier that we were following for the summer. With the summer ones, we've had multiple camps, contact days, our speed and strength, following these summer guidelines that were put out, and I'm happy to report we've had 0 issues. Our coaches, our athletes, everyone involved has done a fantastic job of doing these and they're pretty tight restrictions. Whether it's numbers that you can have inside at a time, it was that 9-to-1 ratio for 10 people, whether it was the weight room, wrestling room, you name it. They did a great job with that. Everyone's had masks on inside here since August, and everyone's doing their part to make this possible. So I applaud them for everyone involved with that. The guidelines and considerations that they put out, it impacts, it's a wide range here. The document's 23 pages, and I can give you kind of the highlight points of it, but it walks through everything from protocols for participation at an event, what it looks at for spectators, if someone were to test positive for COVID, what that looks like, the after and process that you need to do, close contact that's involved. And that's one thing that Pierce County really wanted to hit on, talking with AZ Snyder, that there is an assumption of added risk. If someone in your household is going to participate in extracurricular activity, regardless of the risk level, there is an added risk there, that if they are exposed to COVID or someone on their team and they're found to be in that close contact point, all family members could be looking at that quarantine for 14 days. So that's an important piece that we're going to be following up on with our coaches and making sure everyone acknowledges that assumption of risk with that. So just to make sure, I guess, knowledge is power, making sure that they understand that.
And Matt, I just want to pause 2 things. I wanted to compliment Matt. This has been a really difficult, challenging aspect because we were waiting for guidelines from DHS that would interface with WIA. We also, in our middle border, cut across and play in 3 different counties. And each county has their own public health, and the individuals interpret and sometimes apply the rules differently. Some of the guidance that was supposed to come out was going to be a little bit, was going to be set to decrease some of the variability. Last night, Matt and I talked with AZ Snyder, so we have updated information. And then from the close contact, Matt, I really appreciate the information you've already sent out to families that participate in the 2 sports that have started. But you want to just reiterate that close contact and that added risk, just so that both our families understand and the board understands that we will have a Google form that makes sure they understand the risk reward, what the symptoms are, but the added question that we had to add to the survey.
Yeah, the added question would be basically the acknowledgement that added assumption of risk. And this is in the slide later also. Basically going out to our families with students participating, that if someone were to test positive, this could impact their entire family of a teammate even with that quarantine. And some families may have some decisions to make, which we do in a lot of different cases, but I think that's something that people might not be aware of completely. And talking with AZ, that's something she really wanted us to emphasize and make sure that people understood that. And so more information will be coming out on that, but that's something we just did want to point out there.
Thank you.
A couple things with the summer guidelines, and I had phone calls into WIA. I talked with some people down there about it, and the matrix, that's one thing that Pierce County asked about for more clarity, so trying to find that information game there and make sure everyone's on the same level playing field to make this happen. And some things considerations, how they're a little bit different is, like I said before, the guidelines had it that you couldn't have no more than 10 people in the gym at a time. So now to play volleyball in the fall, you physically can't do that. 6 players on a side, you need, referees, and sometimes you need coaches depending on who it is. But we have a good coach. We want him in the gym. But it's impossible to do with that number. So they're looking at ways to make things possible. And talking with the WIAA, they said striking that balance, that talking with your local control, your county health and whatnot, and finding ways to make it possible, and looking at how we can do things for the student athletes to have these opportunities. As you talk about safety and health, those are things that we're going to have at the forefront, making sure that we are safe. But they really emphasize too the mental health aspect of things, of being involved. And there's different surveys that they did. Dr. McGuine through the University of Wisconsin, I linked that survey here as presentation on just the depression numbers and things that increased highly in adolescents based on the COVID situation. So those are things that they're keeping in mind with that. As Dr. Spikuza alluded to, the DHS planned to be releasing a new metric with recommendations. That is old information that I have up there. So that changed as of at 1:30 there. So you can go from there. Any questions on that? Some other updates, future changes, just kind of overall general information that the WIA came out with. They're looking at postseason tournaments. The term they keep using is the culmination of the season. They cannot guarantee that regionals, sectionals, state tournaments will happen. They can't guarantee that, whether it's based on not being able to find a venue or just not deeming it safe to bring all these communities and tens of thousands of people together at one spot. So they're going to decide on postseason what that's going to look like within 30 days of completion of the regular season for each activity. And it may be a postseason, but it may be more of like a regional type tournament, where it's maybe 4 teams that they seed and they play, and then they have a regional champion, and that's the end of the season. So there's a good chance it could look different. The WA will come up with more information on that and regarding what a postseason could look like. If you are eliminated from the postseason, you can add contests. So if you lose that first round game and you still want to play a few regular season games, you are able to do that. They're allowing that. A deadline for declaration, September 1st, they look at. That's not a hard deadline per se, but what they're looking at is they want to know teams that are going to try to move ahead with fall activities, or teams that are going to commit to the alternative fall schedule. So they want to make sure that they're, at least have some numbers lined up, and like I said, they're very flexible with that. And a season would be considered 50%, complete if you get to 50% of your max allowed schedule. And as we speak, I got an email from WA with kind of more clarity breaking that down. So more information will come about with that, and we'll cross that bridge if we need to. So an example would be, our volleyball teams allowed 15 meets during the regular season. If they were to get to 8, they hit that threshold for what would be deemed a complete season. It's also based on weeks, or if you compete in the postseason tournament, that would then deem you ineligible for the alternative fall season, if that makes sense. What they're trying to do is they want to give opportunities. That's what the WA did with these rulings. They want to give opportunities, but they don't want people to exploit it either or be double dipping. Hey, we play a football season in the fall, and then let's turn around and not play our last game so we can play another season in March. So they're making sure that safety, and we're not overusing our athletes, and being smart along that approach. We talked about contact days that are allowed. They're usually in the summer, but the WA said with the unique situation that we're in, if you did not do a camp or contact days in the summer, you will now be allowed to do those in the school year, during this year. There has to be a dead period, as it's called, before the start of your season, and so we'd have to find windows in between seasons and whatnot, so we wouldn't make athletes being choosing what they're doing. That's just something that the WA put out there for teams that are trying to get their athletes together and do some things in a positive manner. They are looking at multi-team competitions and saying try not to do those, highly discouraged. And as a conference, that's one thing that we took out there in terms of like volleyball, looking to really limit that. And non-bordering state competition is also discouraged. Local Minnesota travel for us would be deemed okay. They're talking like going down to Florida for a jamboree or something along those. With the alternative fall season, that will push our spring sports, that they will go into June, if not all of June. And so What the WIA did open up is, the examples I'm gonna use is like a club softball player. We have a lot of athletes here at Prescott that are involved in AAU, Junior Olympics, different club teams. So if we had a softball player, they could play on our varsity softball team. And then if they're also on a club softball team that starts in June, they could play on that team for up to 2 events. And an event could be one singular game or it could be a weekend tournament. So they are opening that opportunity. Along with that, there could be some collaboration pieces that need to come together. If they're really big with their club team and they're going to a tournament somewhere they really want to participate in, but we have an event also that week that are, there's gonna have to be some flexibility, I guess, that you could say. But that is an opportunity that the WIA did present there. Any questions on any of that? I don't mean to bombard you with all this, but just keep you in the loop. Keep it moving. The next one here, I did link 2 calendars. The top one is the WIA calendar, which, bless their hearts, it's a little tough to read though. And it includes the whole plethora across the board of what the WIA does offer for sports. There's some that we don't here. So the PHS calendar one is more our nest of activities. And I added some color to make it stick out a little bit more and put dates and whatnot on both sides. Showed off some technology skills unlike Kyle Flaherty. Basically, there would be some overlap in things that we can talk about and how then we would look at that at our level and things we would need to do if we did look at an alternative fall schedule, how we'd have to be creative in some avenue. So you have that for your perusal if you need. It's not a one or all. It's not an all or nothing. So some fall sports could be played in the traditional fall window here that we're in right now, while others could be played in the alternative fall window. So you could kind of pick and choose based on the sport if you wanted to. And looking at that, our low-risk sports is deemed for exposure. Cross country and girls golf have started. We got our first golf competition is this Friday, and then our first cross country meet would be the 3rd of September there. Our high and moderate risk due to exposure levels, football and volleyball sports, Pierce County Public Health is not advising them at this time due to Pierce County being at high risk, but they do not plan to stop them from occurring at this time as long as the considerations and guidelines are followed and we do not have an uptick in outbreaks or whatnot. They understand the benefit of extracurricular, talking with Pierce County Public Health. They understand the benefits and the good that it does for students to be involved from a lot of different avenues. But she said they cannot advise it at this time due to us being at high risk. So that's a consideration point I did want to point out in full transparency. And I linked there the Pierce County dashboard where you can look at numbers with outbreaks and burden and whatnot, kind of similar to we talked before with the hybrid approach in that metric there. Any questions on that?
Does this,
Oh, go ahead.
are
Yep.
these the same for middle school sports? I know that what's 7th grade volleyball starts to fall under this. So is this kind of the same guidelines or there's different dates?
For dates in terms of?
Just, I'm looking at this calendar. This is high school sports?
This is high school, yep,
Okay,
this is
and
high school.
middle
I'm sorry, I
school
should have been
has-
more specific. Yep, volleyball, I'll get to them and go. We're looking at all middle school sports right now would start September 8th. And we're looking at capping all of them October 16th for fall
And
season.
do they have anything like fall, like a second fall season, or is it strictly, okay?
That would be, yep, that would be deemed if we want to do that. In full transparency, I don't see that
Oh,
happening.
yeah.
Yep, it'd be right now or next year in 2021.
Matt, I think it would be helpful, just 2 things. In order for the high-risk sports to move forward, there also are some sanctions that are going to be put on that do fall under the purview of public health with regards to spectators
Yep.
and audiences. I think if you could start with volleyball because it's indoors and then football.
Okay, I do have that here coming up in 2 slides.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right, and then also, just from a board perspective, you kind of understand that WIA is trying to work with all districts and different districts and also our middle border conferences, right?
Yep.
So one of the questions we had is if we're just kind of for discussion purposes, if there's any concern or pursuit that you want us to be looking at is pursuing an alternative schedule at this time based on what you know, or are you good with us continuing to follow kind of the traditional schedule?
You want us to jump in now and ask Pat? You got any thoughts on that?
I guess I didn't quite understand the ask.
So right now, the different sports like football and volleyball could pick a different season, different time of the year to engage. And
Yep.
some districts have done so, and we're just curious if there's any input from the board at this point of asking us to pursue that in any way.
Well, I would start, Matt, what, and when it comes to conference alignment, what's been some of the discussion with the middle border teams? Has there been like a consensus, like we all go or no go, or?
No, it's full transparency, and some have not yet to vote or a true, what I've gathered is a majority of them plan to move ahead with all fall sports. And that's, like Dr. Scusa said, we span over 3 counties, us and Ellsworth fall in Pierce, and you have Amory and Osceola and Polk, and then you have the 4 in St. Croix Central, Baldwin, Woodville, and the Richmond and Somerset. And they looked a little different, even their summer contact, their camps and whatnot. They were in full pads for football. Our guys put on helmets and a lot of footwork drills, didn't touch a football. They were tackling up in Osceola, good for them. So it looked a little different. Full transparency.
So the consensus in the Middle Border Conference is the teams are going to be playing football and volleyball this fall, not in the spring.
They're going to move ahead this fall with all sports. As of right now, that's the way things are flying for them.
Matt, last question. I think you already said this for me, but if we do start, Prescott starts, and we do not reach that 50% of max game played, do we have the opportunity then to take advantage of that alternate fall season?
Yes.
Okay.
And for football, that looks like October 5th is kind of that halfway point. So, I mean, really, if we don't go to fully closing our schools or something like that, it looks like it would make sense that.
We'd have some time,
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't see us wanting to pursue the rest of the season of football if our kids can't be in our buildings at all, you know? But we've got time. And hopefully that doesn't happen.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
Kind of continuing on here, and this might answer some of the questions a little bit more clarity. Just kind of breaking it down a little bit with our high risk and moderate risk for exposure sports. Football right now, our first scheduled game is set for September 25th. That'd be at Baldwin Woodville. And WA does have some acclimatization and minimum practices allowed before you can have a game. And so we'd be looking at a schedule will be scrimmaged right now at Amory for September 18th. The Middle Border, we set that up as a conference just to make sure everyone had a scrimmage at least set up. It would just be with one other team right now. And so for us to scrimmage on the 18th, we're looking to start on September 7th for practice, but we could start no later than September 9th and still be able, in order to compete there, to meet those early season thresholds. And then volleyball, our first scheduled match is September 15th, so basically we'd have to start there September 7th or 8th to be able to participate in that first scheduled match there. And volleyball would be all Middle Border Conference schools, and it would just be head-to-head dual matches. And a schedule's put together with that. It would be, football would also be only conference opponents. And that's still getting put together. It's still up in the air. We got an email today from New Richmond that they're kind of getting shuffled around with some stuff. And so there's still a lot of moving parts.
So it's decided to do conference. I know there's some talk about doing county, but it is going to be within conference.
Yes, within conference. I did explore some options if just reaching out to other ADs in the county, if we were all in the same boat that we were not able to do something in the fall, a potential maybe Pierce County type. If Middle Border moved on, without us in Ellsworth or whatnot, what our options might be for the alternative fall season in the spring, just to have that. Kind of some points to ponder, some things to look at. As I alluded to before, majority of the Middle Border, they plan to move ahead this fall. And where we're kind of varying right now is with spectators. I emailed out today all the ADs. This kind of we've been talking about this for weeks on end here about, what it looks like for each county. And we would be an outlier right now. Right now, we're not allowing fans inside for volleyball. It'd be 0 fans inside. It'd be necessary personnel only. Everyone would be in masks, including the players. And we'd play volleyball, we'd live stream it, and that would be that. Football games would be very limited for home football games. Talking with the county right now, they're saying 50 spectators total. 50 total. And so it is what it is. Also, we'd live stream that. We'd have to look at things like with dance team performing at half times of football games. Is that something we want to entertain, and what that would look like? All other middle border right now, though, would they be looking at right now, and I can't speak for them, but just kind of what they're saying is they would allow up to 2 tickets for each volleyball player to attend their gyms for games, and some of them up to 4. And for football, 4, and they might open it up a little bit more if they have the space.
And
So, go ahead.
Is that difference because of the counties? Okay.
Yes.
And then Matt, just you kind of explained the volleyball, and given that football is outside and we can have 50, we are leaning that it would be our fans and parents of our players versus allowing 25 from the visiting team. So we will live stream, but our thought is that we would give our home students and families first.
We would. I got a little resistance from some ADs today on that. About, home. And I talked with our new head football coach about it today. Keeping him apprised, Jordan Hansen, and just some ideas I kind of threw at him if we are allowed to continue on and do this, which we're looking to do. Kind of being the road warriors a little bit. So if instead of us hosting Osceola, they have a nice turf field up there in beautiful Polk County. If we'd be able to go up there, we could bring a contingency of fans there instead of having to watch the live stream. So we're going to be flexible. Obviously, it'd be great to play on Laney. I'll take that grass any day of the week. But we're looking at options to make it possible and the best experience for all involved. But ultimately, it's going to come down to giving the kids the chance to participate. If we can't have fans in the stands, we can't have fans in the stands. We're going to do our best to give the highest quality live stream that we can. So kind of moving on here, the overlap of seasons. If you look at the PHS calendar on slide 5, that'll give you a better idea. If we did go to the alternative fall window, we're going to have to modify, we're going to have to be flexible. Here's where us as a district, it might look different from other school districts. And I can't speak to exactly what it would look like. I'd gather more input and stuff on that, but I would really struggle with, an example would be our football team playing 4 weeks into our track and boys golf and baseball season. That'd make it really hard on our coaches. That'd make it really hard on our athletes that want to be multi-sport athletes, which we highly encourage. It does offer opportunities, which is fantastic, but we would have to collaborate. We would have to be flexible and look at some different points there. And our coaches are fantastic. They understand that. They're student-centered in their approach. But we'd have to have some conversations on what that would look like if that potentially could take place. I have ideas on it, but nothing is concrete right now. Some other points to consider. If we looked at the alternative season, I don't know what our cross-country trail would look like in March. There's still snow on the ground. Our football field, if we played a game on Laney Field in March, I don't know if we could turn around the following August or September and have any grass left on it. We'd probably have to look at other communities for borrowing or renting out space for that turf option there. So those are some things to consider there. And lastly, right, wrong, and different, perceptions. You look at the Big Ten in the news, and that fiasco going on now with everything with them. The Minnesota State High School League postponing some or all of their fall sports, and then us playing everything. That perception of what that looks like. But then you look at all other middle border conference schools are like size demographically near us schools playing and us not in the fall. And that perception also. So that's just something I put there on points to ponder, because those are things that, truth be told, do weigh on me. So I figured I'd put it out there, make it public. Any questions on that? I don't mean to drag on here too long, but getting to tier 2 and 3 here. looking at middle school sports, it's very important. Middle school sports are also very important. The age of the kid, also though the mental makeup of them and the growth there and that social opportunity. Like I said, it's important. And if we don't, it's a tier 2 approach though. Tier 1 would be more that high school. That's more where we're looking to focus in. But tier 2 that is also vital in my opinion. If we don't offer something, kids are going to find other things to do. They're going to lose interest, or unknown approaches might come in that they offer. Other leagues start up or things that go on. So, I feel if we can set considerations and guidelines in a safe manner that we can control this and supervise this with our coaches here in district, that's a positive, in my opinion. Just looking at the interest level alone, as of yesterday, for middle school sports, we had a plethora of kids signed up, 41 for volleyball, 40 for football, 24 for cross country, and that's gone up today. And like we talked about, that'd be that September 8th start date. And then we look to cap that and be done by October 16th. So I would like to offer some sort of opportunity for them. It's got to be realistic, got to be safe, got to be manageable. It will look different. It will look different, that's for sure. And I talked to Mr. Igo on this too, working with our varsity coaches on our approaches for this and ideas and what they would see as things that they would like to see out there and see done. Obviously, safety, health, well-being is all our number one approach with that. Full transparency, I don't see us playing a full schedule. The seasons are already getting pushed back with that September 8th start date, and you can only do so much in that window there. So a full schedule, I don't see it happening. You got to explore it though a little bit, but looking at the hybrid model, Tanya, the question you asked earlier, that'd be something that weigh in there. How do kids get to school for practice and that flexibility we have to offer? Bus maximums that we're at right now. How many buses are we gonna load up for a 7th grade football game, an 8th grade volleyball match? Just our bandwidth with that, gym space, and different factors that come with that. So those are things that we got to consider with that. Looking at some other options, an entirely in-house type approach where it's skills, drills, workouts, kind of given by the varsity coach, the middle school coaches, and then with considerations for inter-squad events, whether it's scrimmages, 7-on-7 football, some virtual races or whatnot, or looking at a modified type approach where the teams practice, they get together, obviously following the guidelines, considerations, and we look to set up some contests when we're ready with local schools, whether it's in Ellsworth or River Falls, so they can have that carrot also at the end of the season. It might only be 3 weeks worth of games, but it's something. It's something. So football might only get 4 games in compared to the 8. Volleyball might only get four matches in, compared to the regular 9 or 10. It might only get 2 cross-country meets in. But I think it's important to at least explore that and work towards that. It's for the kids. PCR, we talked about that tier 2 and tier 3. Angela McGee's been working her tail off, trying to find some options, and it's all pending Pierce County Public Health approval. And I think we, after talking with AZ, I think we found some things that we could do. We need to find something for the younger kids to do. Like we said, safety and health at the forefront. The nice part is this is all in-house. This is our kids, our Prescott kids here in town. And so we're looking at an outdoor volleyball opportunity that's for 3rd for 6th grader, and that's outdoor. They'd be doing all skills and drills. That'd be the focus of the program, looking to do that on the middle school grounds. Be using the outdoor volleyball net there. Might even be using talking to Angela, the tennis nets work fine, she said, especially with the younger kids, just for serving and whatnot, just for technique. So that approach there, and then looking at flag football, with skills and drills focus, very similar there for our 1st through 4th grade. And then kind of a revised tackle football program. We still want to get those kids wearing pads to get used to carrying them around and doing that things. Plus it's cool and you look tough, right, Pat? But how that goes about, they're used to going and playing like Hastings. That's not going to happen this year. So looking at an approach where maybe Jordan Hansen, I've been talking with him, our new varsity football coach, about having some of the high school coaches involved with skills and drills type different things. Maybe they do some flag football, some 7-on-7 type stuff that they're able to do that inter-squad scrimmages amongst themselves, the 5th and 6th graders, evenly divided and whatnot, as opportunities for them. And some other things Angela's looking at, like a running type club, track and field type stuff, soccer, golf, things that we can get off the ground and give our kids an opportunity this fall. And these dates are still they're very flexible. I don't want to give concrete dates to anyone or sign-ups because it changes by the minute. It's unbelievable. But we want to be able to open something up for everybody, I guess you could say. This slide here basically kind of sums up Dr. Spikuza and I talking with AZ Snyder, Pierce County Public Health, and just kind of understanding, like we alluded to before, it is important for our kids to be involved, and we both see the benefits of that from all sides, and we're working in collaboration on that. They're looking at the risk exposure of different sports, and so they advise some things, and other things they look at and they don't advise. But looking at the risk and the reward there of doing things, and then the assumed risk, which we talked about before, with the exposure, if someone were to have that impact that could have on the family and a potential quarantine there. Any questions on that? All right, I guess to wrap it up here then, finally, just kind of looking at, there's a lot of different factors obviously, and like we said, very fluid situation that will impact decisions and things that we're doing. Kind of to lay it out, the WIA, considerations, they give us the how to be safe and operate in each sport. Like I said, we had 0 issues this summer, and now they're looking to open, I don't want to say open that up a little bit more, but a little bit more allowance to, like we use the volleyball example. You can't have 9 people in the gym and play a sanctioned match. So we did great this summer. We're looking to expand that with the new considerations for the fall. And then the DHS and the PCPH, Pierce County Public Health, they give the when. And we got the go-ahead right now to, not advise, but we got the go-ahead that we work in collaboration to explore our options and keep trudging ahead and do it in a safe and controlled manner. And then I included the slides there from the study that Dr. McGuine did from UW, talking about the social and emotional impact of students. And then I guess basically, kind of at this time here, March 19th, near 10 o'clock, me personally looking to move ahead with fall sports at all different levels in some capacity, high school, middle school, PCR, and with our coaches and everyone involved understanding how to operate in a safe and healthy manner. And we have the ability, we understand that we could be told to halt or pivot at any moment. Our coaches understand that. They've been communicating that with our athletes, as have I, with families, any chance I communicate with them, that we feel like we can do this, and we would like that opportunity. And if we need to hit pause, we'll hit pause. I guess that's all I have, if there's any questions.
Comments from the board. Vicki?
Yeah, so for masks for the sports for these kids, are we going to be providing them with the masks? Because the blue surgical type masks are better because less particles and the fact that you can actually breathe in them a lot better. So are we going to be providing that?
We can, yep, we can. We're looking at some different options. The gaiters, as they say, the ones you can pull down and stuff, a lot of schools are going to them just for the ease of,
they are easier, but they're not, as far as the protection portion of it,
yep,
they're rated really low, and with close contact type sports, that's why I'm thinking the
blue
type
surgical. Yeah. We're exploring all options.
Okay.
That's what some other schools are doing, and so we're looking into everything.
Okay.
Right now, like in the weight room, that's what we have is the blue surgical ones.
Okay.
When the kids come in and don't have theirs, that's what they're using to
Yeah.
work out. I've worn mine a few times, in there when I stumbled in there, and it's different, but you get used to it real quick, and
Yeah.
it's the way we go about it.
Yeah, and Vicki, just kind of some of the information that came out today, they are re-ranking the different types of face coverings.
Yep.
We did receive 2,500 face coverings from DPI, and we will be using that for students first and foremost. We did learn that volleyball could move forward, but they are asking us to mask the athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what we'll move forward with. And DHS is having a presentation on Monday, the 24th. So we'll get more information about that. And then AZ Snyder is going to work with us on the fall sports. Although she had some reservations, she said she's not going to leave us high and dry, and she'll work with us to critique our practices and game time setups to try to make and mitigate the risk as much as we can.
Okay.
Tanya?
No, I've kind of asked as we've gone through, so thank you for the presentation.
Steve?
Thanks, Matt.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thanks. Matt, thank you very much.
Keep them playing.
Also, thanks for that PowerPoint
good.
with that study. That's interesting. The mental health and stuff, yeah.
All right, item 3, September board meeting.
So,
Moving to the
yeah,
23rd.
we just wanted to kind of make an announcement, just verify your calendars. We are moving our regular third Wednesday to become the annual meeting that will be in the Performing Arts Center. And then the regular board meeting would be the week after, and that would be on September 23rd in the Performing Arts Center.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last month. Any comments on this one? I think we're good there.
Good.
All right. We are off of info and discussion on the recognition of visitors. Anybody care to be recognized? Does not appear so. So we can move to item K, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you. And we